Welcome to Post-Tsunami, where we talk about our experiences with the tsunami of sound and um, our time after the tsunami of sound and sort of our future goals and prospects. And I want to start off by saying that thank you, Julian, for taking the time to do this. How have you been? It's been a while.
It's been quite a while. Am I coming in clearly? Because if I pull out that external hard drive, you think it's going to crash my computer?
No, I don't think so. You
Okay,
shouldn't.
let me pull it out
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it
go ahead.
was it was kind of slowing things down. Let's see if my computer dies first. All right, looks good.
Okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah, I've been not too bad. It's been pretty busy as of lately, especially this year. I guess
No, I
I'll go
bet.
into it in detail a little bit more.
Yeah.
But as a teacher, things have been a lot different this year.
hmm Yeah, so
Oh
you've been
yeah.
working from home for since like March, right?
Yes.
Last March?
So the first time that we went into a shelter in place was in March 13th. I think that was a specific day. It was Friday the
Yeah.
13th. And yeah,
Very, very
we have not
lucky.
been in person since then. But I'll go over I don't know, the introductory stuff, I guess, when you get to it. I'm going to assume that there's a part where you're going to ask me what I'm doing now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, before we go on, let's go ahead and do the introduction. So,
Yeah, I
yeah, go over your name, graduation year, all that in the notes.
yeah. So I'm Julian. I was in the CI band from 2006 to 2010. I kind of was also in it later on, but I guess I'll go into that a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
After I graduated from CI, I went to UC Davis. I pursued a bachelor's degree in biological sciences, a minor in education, in the hopes of being a high school biology teacher. After graduating from Davis as an undergrad, I went to their College of or was it College of Education? School of Education is what they call it. I
Yeah.
got my teaching credential and master's there, um, and I started teaching in 2016.
hmm
I taught at a middle school. It was a K-8, but I taught seventh grade life science at Chavez Elementary School in Oxnard. And 2017, I got my master's in education.
hmm
Then, after 1 year at Chavez, a biology teacher position opened up at CI, which was one of the big things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so,
Perfect timing.
right after that first year of teaching at the middle school level, I went to the high school. Ran into a lot of our former teachers. They still remembered me. I
Yep.
still remembered them. It was very, very cool, very interesting to see them again. And I taught there for 2 years. And then I decided I wanted to move up to Northern California. And so I moved up to Northern California,
hmm
and I'm in my second year of teaching elementary school science, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade.
Oh, okay.
Um, and honestly, it's been really nice because at the high school level, you're always like, oh, hey, I want to. I wish you would have known this earlier, or something like that. And so I
hmm
feel like in by being an elementary school science teacher, I can kind of get to them earlier and kind of instill things
Yeah, 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 yeah.
earlier, which I find is one of the really good benefits. And so I've been teaching um, elementary for the last 2 years, and honestly, it's been really nice. This year's been this year plus
Uh,
March of last year. It's been really difficult, not only for us but even for the kids.
oh
Um,
yeah, yeah, for
I,
sure.
I can definitely get into more detail with that later.
hmm
Um, but yeah, so I'm currently a elementary science teacher. It's my fifth year of teaching right now.
Teaching just in general. And what's your favorite? Do you prefer teaching high school, middle school, or elementary school?
No, so now that I've been able to teach all of the different levels and I have
Yeah.
experience, I definitely do enjoy elementary the most. It definitely
Really? Okay.
took me time to kind of see that. But again, as I mentioned, being able to reach the kids at the youngest age possible, and really be able to kind of instill something in them that early, I
Yeah.
think can kind of kind of just trigger, like, from then on they'll have a love or a hate of science, or maybe they'll change. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like connecting with them at this youngest age has been really beneficial, I think.
Yeah, okay. And then what specific topics do you teach, or is it just general science? Because when I was in elementary school, I was super into astronomy, everything about planets, Earth, Mars, the moons. So whenever we would go to the library and rent out books, those were always the books I got were like astronomy related books.
Hmm. So I teach general science in to kind of go a little bit back into
Mhm.
science education history. In 2013,
Yeah.
um, the standards for which teachers teach science changed, and we
Uh-huh.
adopted something called the Next Generation Science Standards. And these were new standards compared to the ones that we had when we were in elementary, middle, and high school. These standards focus more on thinking like a scientist
Mhm.
versus knowing just a list of facts, which is one of the things that we did. Um, and so, let's see. I don't know where I was going with that. You'd mentioned,
So
oh, what do I teach? And
yeah.
so, basically, starting from, I guess, kindergarten all the way up until high school, um, the preferred way to teach the students, um, according to the next generation science standards, is to have them all kind of the sciences mixed together. So
Oh, okay.
it's not defined by biology, physics, and chemistry. That's what they save for in high school.
Right.
Everything before that, they prefer that you kind of mix them all together. And
Mhm.
so I teach a little bit of everything. Fifth grade is where we start talking a little bit about space science. Talk about why there's seasons, the reasons of shadows, things like that,
Uh-huh.
and just kind of it's very very specific to right now. Tomorrow,
Uh-huh.
since you seem to be really big on astronomy,
Yeah.
the Perseverance, the Mars lander, is going to try to
Yeah.
attempt to land. So I don't know. By the time this comes
Oh,
out, it'll
cool.
already be
Yeah.
past. But just in case you wanted to look into that.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's general science, and so I teach a little bit of everything: physics, biology, chemistry, earth
Okay.
science.
Has there been like a favorite category of science that you like to teach versus
I
some
mean,
other ones?
I've always liked biology. It wasn't until high school that I
Uh,
really enjoyed science. To be honest, I don't know if I really had a passion for science until I got to high school.
uh,
It wasn't until I took AP Bio that I was like, oh man, this really explains a lot of stuff that I've been wondering about.
yeah.
It literally explained life. And so it made a lot
Yeah.
more sense. And so I did like biology, at least learning it. But in terms of teaching, honestly, at the elementary level, the most fun to teach is physics. A lot of the hands-on stuff
Oh,
that the
yeah, yeah,
kids
yeah.
get to do is physics related. We talked about in fifth grade gravity, and so what
Uh-huh.
we did was we had a project where the students created roller coasters, small-scale roller coasters, marble
Mhm.
roller coasters, and so they learned about gravity, a little bit of friction as well, and they were able to create a roller coaster, marble roller coaster that kind of went over how roller coasters work, and so they
Oh,
were learning a lot of real life applications as well. And so physics is definitely one of them. At the elementary level, you actually you try to do as much as you can hands on because
yeah.
that's
That's what
a
I
lot of
remember.
the way that kids learn, at least from what I understand. So even with like earth science, we still do a lot of hands-on things. My fourth graders right now are in their earth science unit, and they're talking about lava. And
Uh-huh.
so one of the things that I did was I did a demonstration between thin versus thick lava,
Mhm.
where the thin lava would be like water, and then the thick lava would be water and I think flour. And so they'd
Mhm.
be blowing bubbles into it. In a normal situation, they would be the ones blowing bubbles, but because of
Yeah.
the pandemic, I had to do a demonstration version, and so I blew bubbles into it to show how the different thicknesses of the lava will cause certain volcanoes to explode versus just to kind of run and ooze out.
Oh, okay.
So even though physics is the one that it's kind of just out hands-on. You have to do experiments to do it. You can incorporate a lot of other, I guess, hands-on things with the other subjects.
Oh, okay, cool. I know we're getting a little bit off topic. We'll go back into all the science stuff for the present section. But I want to go back into the regular tsunami, the pre-tsunami. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah.
Did you have any band experience before going into high school? Like, did you do band in middle school
Yeah,
or
so
elementary?
I did band in middle school. I didn't do it until eighth grade, and for my middle school, it was seventh and eighth grade for middle school because I know
Oh,
at Blackstock and I think other ones it was six, seven, eight,
yeah.
and so I was actually following in my sister's footsteps
Huh.
because she joined band when she was in eighth grade. And I don't know, I
Yep.
just kind of wanted to be like her, wanted to follow in her
Yeah.
footsteps as much as I could.
Yeah. I mean,
And
that's what I
so
did. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't join band, even though it was an option at seventh grade until eighth grade. And so I did have experience of 1 year. I went to Frank Intermediate and I bought a trumpet, hoping that I'd be able to learn trumpet. And what happened was when I bought the trumpet and I had, I think it was like one of the first days of band. I tried playing the trumpet, even though I'd practiced over the summer. I tried playing the trumpet, but I just sounded so bad. And my band director was like,
Mm.
"You sound like a dying horse." And I was like, "Okay." And so he gave me a baritone. And once I had the baritone, I just fell in love with baritone. I don't know what it was about it. I don't know if it was the size, the ease of playing, but it was just being able to play that baritone that really kind of kept me going and wanting
Wow.
to stay in band and keep learning music. Um, I stuck to low brass for as much as I could until I went to high school. But yeah, 1 year of and before high school.
Okay. And then I remember you being a trumpet like in high school.
Yeah.
So
So after
did you do baritone and then trumpet and then baritone slash trombone, or how is that?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And so I had bought that trumpet that I had in middle school. I didn't want it to just kind of sit
Yeah.
there and collect dust. And so when I came to CI, I decided to play trumpet again, even though
Mm.
I wasn't that good. I decided to play trumpet. Um, and so I think for the first 2 years, when I was at CI's band, I played trumpet. And basically, what happened was I guess it was my junior year. There weren't a lot of trombone players. I think there's only one trombone player,
Yeah.
and most of the music requires at least two. There's at least two parts to
Yeah. Yeah.
trombone,
Yeah.
and so I decided
Mm.
to learn trombone, and so I self-taught myself trombone. At the same time, that was I think one of the first times that Terrell had introduced Tuba Christmas, and
Yep.
so that gave me experience with tuba and yeah, I typically stuck to instruments that were in need with the band. And so
Mhm.
I remember my senior year, we were playing a Beatles medley, and one of the instruments called for French horn because there was a French horn solo.
Uh-huh.
And so I started to learn French horn then. So we kind of just jumped around a little bit.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, started off buying a trumpet. It wasn't good, so I played baritone, went back to trumpet in high school, and then jumped around brass, mainly low brass, for the
Mm.
last few years.
I see. So, Julian, you're a trader, I see.
If you want to call it that, sure.
Okay, cool. Let's see. So you got into how you got into each instrument. The next question is like, how was your high school bandy self? How were you in the past? What were you like? Uh, Behaviorisms, mannerisms, all that good stuff.
Oh wow, that's going to be quite an interesting throwback. So I guess I'm just trying to ground myself into it. I'll give
Yeah.
everybody else
Yeah.
feedback or give everyone else kind of context of what I'm thinking about. So
Mhm.
in high school, I was one of the honor students, honors AP classes, all of those I'd be taking. And so I would always be with the same group of people. We always had the
Mhm.
same class together because there's only like one AP
Yeah.
class, or you'd see the same people
Yep.
all the time. And so um, I guess I don't know if nerdy's the right word, um, but I always seem to really be passionate about things. One thing I could think about was conducting. There's something about conducting that I really enjoyed doing,
Yeah.
even
Same.
before I became the drum major. And so it's little things that I became addicted to. Another thing I could think of is I don't know if you were there. You probably were, but we had, oh, it was our senior march. It was
Is it Mother
Mother
Hubbard?
Hubbard March.
Yep. Dude, that's my
And
favorite march, hands down. The best march out of my 4 years.
And I was like, once we started playing that, I was always curious as to what songs were in it because it
Mhm.
comprised of, I think it was 7 to 12 different nursery
Yeah,
story rhymes.
yeah, it was very
And
Disney-esque.
so it was like, I think there was at least one night that I spent like almost the entire night up until like maybe midnight trying to, do research into listening into, what it was, seeing what other blogs I've written about.
Mhm.
And so I got really obsessed with that. Another thing that I got really obsessed with was reading scores. Um, I think it's kind of, I don't know if nerd's the right word, but it was just it was very interesting to see how all the parts fit together. And as a
Yeah,
conductor or as a director, yeah, I mean, it's your job, but,
yeah.
not as just to look at it, just to see the score and see that everybody has the different parts and see how they all fit together was really awesome. And hopefully I'll remember to talk about it later. But that kind of got my interest into arranging. So I think I'll go
Mhm.
into that a little bit later. Save it
Okay.
for part two.
Okay, okay, cool. Let's see. How did I want to follow up on that? I think if you watch Eduardo's episode, he described it as academic, like you were a great academic, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Um,
Yeah. Okay. Now
I
I'm
know.
remembering I'm trying to remember what the original question was when I was talking about those little things. Yeah, I guess an
Yeah,
academic is the best way to describe it. I was very book smart. I think
yeah.
that's the best way to describe it.
Mhm.
Um, I really enjoyed school. I really enjoyed learning.
Mhm.
I wasn't good at history, but I always wanted to try to be the best student I could be for my
Yeah.
teachers and I guess for my family too.
Mhm.
Um, and music was definitely something that I grew a very big fondness of, I think, because of my band experience. The people I met, the music that I encountered, the different assignments that even Terrell assigned would always get me thinking about other
Yeah.
things. And so, very, very academic is a great way to describe it. Um, and I think I'll stick with that.
Okay. Yeah, we had assignments in band. I don't remember any of them. uh,
Well, I mean, like, I think he had to assign some sort of assignment. It didn't
yeah,
necessarily have to
yeah,
be like
yeah.
a
Like
paper
assignment.
assignment.
Yeah,
But I do remember here and there, like we would have like a worksheet, like maybe once or twice that we'd have a worksheet that we have to fill out based on
yeah.
something that Terrell had taught. I don't know if like there's a jazz thing that we had learned or just like some scales or something. Um, there were a couple of like paper assignments I remember.
Yeah, we had I think we constructed the circle of fifths and all that, so we had to like cut it
Oh,
out
really?
and like pin
Oh
it
yeah,
through.
I kind of remember that, and I remember there was this other worksheet where we would be able to see what like concert key
Yeah,
was in relation to the different
mhm.
instruments, depending on what key they're in. So I thought that was pretty cool. I use
Yeah,
that a
yeah, yeah.
lot, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah,
And when I was arranging things, I would be like, I forgot what instrument. Or like, what does that mean if they're playing a C? And so I
yeah,
use that.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I music theory was never like my strong suit. So, uh, when I was drum major, like I didn't really know that much music theory, and I didn't want to take the time to use it or to learn it.
Mm.
Uh, so I tried to figure out other ways to um, conduct the band and lead the band and all that good stuff.
I think
Um,
another thing that helped me when it came to music was, aside from
uh-huh.
the marching band instruments, I started to learn ukulele. My freshman year,
Mhm.
Terrell had these really, really like old, cheap ukuleles,
Yeah.
and I borrowed one. And I don't know, there's something about it, the simplicity, the kind of size, and that kind of helped me out with music theory as well. Because when you're playing stringed instruments like ukulele, guitar, you learn about chords, and so then you start learning
Mhm.
about not just single notes, which are, you know, what most instruments in band are. Then you start learning about chords. You learn about triads and things like that, and so
Yeah.
that kind of expanded it. And so I
Mhm.
think it was just a matter of trying out all these different things that kind of expanded my music theory knowledge.
I see. So you would say that playing the instrument came first, and then the music theory came behind it. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Once I became invested in an instrument, then I started digging deeper into it.
mhm.
And I think when you start digging deeper into it, you start to see, I guess, just how things fit in terms of music theory. I took one music theory class in college, which is
Yeah, I
kind
did
of
too.
helpful. It helped me understand diminished and augmented, and a couple of the
Mhm.
little things that you'd see at the end of chords. But other than that, I knew most of what was being talked about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me too. It was fairly like rudimentary. But there were other like follow-on music theory 2, 3 that I didn't take.
Mm.
It's mainly just electives. Okay, I want to go into the past a little bit. So,
Mm.
how was your band experience just overall?
The high school one, right?
Yes, high school. Yeah.
I would say overall it was really good. I think I had a really good set of friends, and I definitely think the people in band, all of them, not just the ones that I was friends with, were
Mhm.
really influential into the person I've become now. And so it's really, there was a lot of stuff going on, good and bad, but through it all, I think I definitely learned a lot, and so it was enjoyable for me. Um, I can't speak for everyone else, but
Yeah.
I wanted to. I think my I think my high school self is very different than the one I am now.
Mhm.
But even still, I think it was helpful, my band experience, to kind of get me where I am right now.
Mhm. Yeah, so you say that you're different from your previous self, like, in what way? Why do you say
Yeah,
that?
so one of the things that I've learned many times as a teacher as well
Mhm.
is teamwork, and working together, not being the sole executive decision maker. And I bring up this story every single time when I think about it. We were going to play at the inaugural Santa to the Sea run. And who was that famous person? Julia Roberts, maybe. She was going to be there. And the night
Uh-huh.
before, it was our winter banquet. Um, and so the forecast had said that there was going to be a chance of rain. And so that night, without speaking to anyone else, I just made the executive
Mhm.
decision that we weren't going to go to it, because I didn't want to risk the rain and all that stuff. Then the next day comes, and it's a
Mhm.
bright and sunny day, and then I get a call from Vince, who is one of my really good friends and one of the other band officers. I think he was a band officer. I want to say he was, at the time, and he's like, "Go outside. It's not raining." And I'm like, "Yep. I'm gonna regret this for a while." And it was really hard for me, to ask other people for help. It was really hard for me to, um,
Mhm.
I guess, just ask for advice. And I still kind of have that in me. As a teacher right now, I'm the only science teacher at my school. And so it's a little bit harder to get in
Oh,
contact with
really?
other science teachers.
Wow.
Yeah. But there are other science teachers at the other elementary schools, and we do meet regularly. Um, And so that's one of the things I've learned, to really communicate better with everyone else, instead of just being the sole person to make decisions. Another
Mhm.
thing I think about is like how I feel like I was really strict. I feel like I had really high standards
Yeah.
for
Yeah, I can
myself
see
and the
that.
entire band. And so, like, looking back at it, and like every, I always like think about this in like the teacher aspect now.
Yeah.
It's like, man, I think I was just way too strict. And I think I remember listening to other podcasts, other people had mentioned it. I forgot who it was, but like, I think they enjoyed it. I think they enjoyed kind of the, I guess it was more like a like very military style, very
Yeah.
strict,
Yeah.
very you need to follow these directions. You cannot. There's no exception to it. And in high school, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed kind of having that very strict kind of way of doing band. Um, I think a lot of the people that you had mentioned said that they enjoyed it. I think maybe a couple people. I
Yeah.
I don't remember, but I'm sure there's people that didn't enjoy it as well. Um, but I think that was one of the things that I kind of eased up on,
Yeah.
how strict I was. Um, I just keep relating this to being a teacher, because
Yeah.
now it's not being now it's not really about being strict. It's really about building a good relationship with your students,
Mhm.
um, because you just kind of, to really connect with them, you really have to develop really good bond and connection with them.
Yeah.
And if while I guess being strict, could be helpful for some of the students, I would say not all of them would really learn well under like these like stressful, strict circumstances. And so just building,
Yeah.
being compassionate about them and understanding them, um, is kind of one thing that I've learned to do. Um, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
There's definitely a lot of stuff that a lot of stuff that I did in high school that I always look back and I'm like, man, I'm really glad I've changed. I'm really glad I don't do that kind
Yeah.
of stuff anymore.
Yeah, just from an outside perspective, me looking at your drum majoring in the past, like, yeah, you were fairly strict. When I became drum major, I knew I didn't want to be that strict, but I knew that that strictness was because that we had like an end goal of some goal, whether it was like Pismo, um, or making the band sound as best as possible. For me, I always had like an end goal, and the strictness or the rules or whatever standards we have, it was always just a medium to get to that goal. Um, so I didn't want to be strict for the sake of being strict, and um, that's kind of where I learned how to like, do I need to be a little bit more lenient in this situation? Yeah, I probably should. So
Yeah, I'm like the complete opposite of what I was in high school now. Like,
yeah,
if when one of my students has some sort of issue, I'm really understanding with them. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. Just blah blah blah. I feel like I've learned to be more compassionate, or
yeah.
at least not as like strict when it comes to those things.
Mhm.
Um, I do. Yeah, it's always stuck in my mind, those kinds of things that I did. Like, man, that used to be me.
Yeah. I don't know if this makes you feel any better, but so Paul heard the same story of you missing out for the Santa to the Sea. He
Mm.
he remembered that story, and so the exact same situation came up, but just for Oxnard Christmas parade. And so he knew about your story. He decided to like do the parade, and so he made that executive decision. But then later, Terrell told all the parents like, "Hey, we're gonna cancel." And then guess
Mm.
what happens? There's no
There's only
rain.
one.
Well,
Oh,
no, there's I mean, it was cloudy, but there was no rain. It was totally like March, like it was marchable like weather. It wasn't just
mm,
pouring rain. Um,
mm,
and so I don't know. I just feel really bad for Paul because he made the right decision, but Terrell like backpedaled on it. I guess
mm.
because the parents were complaining. So I don't know. You got to listen to the parents, especially a lot of
Yeah,
if all of me.
yeah. Now that I'm a teacher, I can kind of understand the things that Terrell was talking
Mm,
about and going through. I think as a student, I didn't fully understand all the logistics and things like that teachers have to deal with now.
Uh-huh.
And so, I've come to a better understanding, I think, of the reasoning and the rationale behind some of the things that Terrell had to do. And
Mhm.
so I don't really put it against him. I'm just, it's more, I'm more understanding as a teacher now.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the big thing for me is like even if you disagree, as long as you understand the other perspective, like that's where you can be like kind of at peace with like, okay, I don't agree with that decision, but I understand like why it was made. So, I don't have to be
Yes,
pissed
that's,
off at the other party.
I
uh
think that's definitely something we need to understand in modern times as well too.
yeah, yeah, just in life in general, I would say. Yeah, because
Yeah.
there's definitely not enough of that. Um just to kind of swerve to another question. Did you have a
Mhm.
favorite year in band?
Oh man, I keep listening to the other podcasts, and they keep or a
Yeah.
lot of them were mentioning I think it was like the 2009, whatever the freshman year was, and most of them I think were juniors
Yeah.
at the
I
time.
did that's
Or
what I that's what I know too. Yeah.
it was basically like the I think it was my last year as drum major.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and yeah, I definitely enjoyed. I think my last year, so it was 2009 2010 year.
Mhm.
Um, I think we had a really good amount of freshmen come in, and so that was really good
Oh,
to
no, we had a
see.
fantastic amount.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
probably like one of our largest. So that was really nice to see. Um, I became really good friends with a lot of those freshmen, and then not only them, but I think I was able to strengthen my friendships with a lot of the seniors as well.
Mhm.
Vincent, Eduardo, we definitely became really close, and we worked a lot together um, during our senior year. Um, and I would say that our senior year, we also started to explore new things. Like the only thing I could
Yeah.
think of that was really influential, and it's really something I really enjoyed was we started letting other people conduct. It wasn't just Terrell or
Yeah,
myself
that's really
conduct.
new. Yeah.
We started to let other people conduct. One of the most memorable things was when Lawrence conducted the Blue Danube Waltz.
Mhm.
Um, and so just to be able to kind of, I guess, really show like this is student run. This is
Yeah.
something that while Terrell is our advisor, he was extremely nice to let us kind of, hold the reins and be able to, I guess, take care of the band. I would say it was beneficial.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say
I would
that
agree. I would agree with that. Yeah.
we were we as an entire band were mature enough to be able to do that. And so I think it was helpful um, to kind of let those new experiences happen. Um, and I think that kind of led to more things right after we left.
Mhm.
I think I'd started doing like horn movements or expanding horn movements.
Yeah, that was your
Um,
senior year, and then I kinda continued that on.
then I know that like student arrangements started becoming a thing after I left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, it was. I think that year was a very pivotal year to kind of start doing things that we traditionally didn't do. Start
Mhm.
letting other students do some of the work that usually was only reserved for the director or the
Yep.
drum major. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was a big positive for CI's band. It made CI's band very unique, and it forced maturity, even if you weren't ready, at least definitely for my situation. It forced maturity because, hey, you're the leader of, 50, 60 of your peers. You gotta step up to the plate, if you wanna do a good job. Um, what else
yeah.
do I wanna say?
Um,
Well,
so and I think just overall the whole band, everyone in the band, um, was very, I think we all kind of melded well together. And so I think
Yeah,
with that kind of
yeah,
meshing together, it made it a lot easier for us to
yeah, yeah.
I get to know each other and just kind of bond well. So I think that year was a
Mm.
really good year for really, building a strong connection between us all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the your junior year, I legit thought the band was gonna die because my
I did
class was
too.
so small. I thought the band was gonna die. I was terrified.
Yeah,
Then class of
we
13
yeah
came, that changed everything.
yeah that was one of the scariest things. I want to say it was when you were there, but there was this kind of big scare in
Yeah,
terms of drumline because at around that time, CI and Wainimi's band had decided to combine themselves to create Drumline Revolution. Was
yeah.
that your year? Were you there?
Yeah, yeah, I was there.
Yeah, and so the biggest concern with that was that we would lose our drum line because they would be doing gigs for
Yeah.
the Drumline Revolution. And so that was one of the concerns that I had. And I was worried about that we would lose our drum
Mhm.
line, that we wouldn't have a drum line to perform because of what had happened. Um, but, I think Terrell had mentioned it when we were talking about, seeing this low amount of people, and he said that it kind of comes in waves, and it's kind of
Mhm.
true. You do kind of see waves of like large groups
Yeah.
of classes come, and then there's the small ones. Um, it's there's really no way to predict it. You could look at the, I guess, middle school and see how they're doing in terms of the music program. You can go to the elementary school, see if they're doing that. Um, so yeah, I definitely think it was a very scary moment when the band was at its like smallest.
Yeah, yeah. We
I
were in our
remember
20s.
doing, yeah, we, I remember we had gone to one of the band reviews around LA, and that was where they'd mentioned, oh, you should have a sousaphone, you should have a low brass instrument, or like a really big brass
Yeah,
or
yeah.
bass instrument, because we had Eduardo, I believe, playing the bari sax, but I
Yep.
don't think that was enough for the review. They're like,
Mhm.
you probably have a stronger sound with a sousaphone, and we're like, well, if we did have a sousaphone player, we would definitely do that.
I know if we had
Um,
people to play it, we would.
yeah. So yeah, I definitely think that was kind of one of the scares. You hear that? Like a weird
No.
sound. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So I would say 2008 to 2009 was a very scary year in terms of the band, and
Uh,
then to see the large amount of people, and then just to see everyone kind of the camaraderie, I guess, um,
mhm.
from the people within those from the next year, '09 to 10, was really
Yeah,
uplifting. It was really great to
yeah.
see, and I think that kind of pushed the band forward. The next few years to come.
Mhm. Yeah, and, that year when my class was coming in, like, honestly, I kind of resent my band class for not joining, um, and it's something that I still think about today. I know it's kinda petty because 'cause it's been, like, almost a decade,
Mhm.
since, but, I don't know, just that scare of, like, having the band die and not having members, it's just I don't know, that's something that I still think about every now and then,
But
and it
I
was
would
definitely
say
a
that the
worry.
people that did join from your year were very
Mhm.
dedicated. So it's really
Yeah,
nice to see that even though you were a very small contingent,
yeah,
your group was very dedicated, which is really nice to see.
yeah. Just on another topic, since we're talking about the past, I want to go into all the drum majoring stuff since we were both previous drum majors.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things that I remember back when I was a junior, so I just became the new drum major, and it was a football game against Camarillo, and so I think it was like our second to last like home game for the season. And I decided to do a field show because I guess that's what every drum major wants to do at least once during their time. So
Every other drum major that wasn't CI.
yeah. So we rehearse, I don't know, maybe like 6 to 7 weeks with this routine. We're basically playing pep tunes, but we added formations and movements to it. This is on YouTube, so you can watch this on YouTube. But I forgot what we play. We play Sons of Westwood as our closer, and we're making the CIHS and the CI. We play 2564 and Get Ready. So I'd say pretty standard selection, our core tunes. Because that way we can focus on like the movements and the formations since we had the music down. So we're doing this field show, and we do the performance, and Jonathan Bolser is recording the whole performance from the bleachers. And I remember watching the footage and like someone yelling, "Yeah, go Julian," or something like that. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, something like that. And then like Jonathan had to like correct them and all that. And I remember back then, like I really felt I lived under your shadow, and I wasn't depressed about it, but it did make me feel kind of down. And when I watched that footage back, that was the turning point where I thought to myself, I didn't want to try to be like you. I wanted to be Duke, be myself.
Yeah.
So that's when I made the decision to be like, okay, I gotta lead the band, in my way and not Julian's way.
Yeah. And I have to say that you definitely made an impression. When I was teaching at CI, one of the band parents had mentioned you by name, talking
Oh,
about
really?
how you were very influential, or just to see how well you led the band. She was really happy to see that. I don't even know if no, you probably weren't. It's Emilio's mom.
Oh, yeah. She told me about that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, like, she never mentioned me. So just to make you feel a
Yeah.
little bit better, yeah, she would like talk about how how great and amazing the band was under your leadership. And so she definitely was very just happy to see how well you led the band.
Yeah, just to give more context on that. So so this is what Emilio told me, if I remember correctly. Emilio told me that whenever like, for example, we're at a football game and we made a touchdown or something really big happened, I was really good at having the band respond to that. Whether mostly it was like with music, but I think the band with cheers and all that, I didn't really lead that part. But in terms of the music, I was really good with that. I got that down to the T. I know exactly when to start off playing, when not to play, when to cut off. I got like scary good at it. And it was just learning from your mistakes and taking cues from UCLA's bands, other bands, Davis's band, UC San Diego's band. I took all this information from other bands and I just incorporated that when I was drum major. So I got pretty good at doing stuff like that because a lot of the times, you think about the band, they're like, oh, we're just here to play. But you got to find those moments where it makes sense to have the music respond to whatever is happening, whether it's a football game or a basketball game. It really elevates, the atmosphere of whatever's happening.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think the name, the Tsunami of Sound, and being the spirit of CI,
Yeah,
I think was very fitting. And I think
yeah,
those little tips that you're talking about, those really make the difference. Those really
yeah.
accentuate things. That the
Mhm,
football team makes a touchdown, everyone's cheering, everyone's playing, or even any good thing happening in sports and the
mhm.
band's there, or even just having the band there in general.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think always elevates things. I think we
Mhm,
had such a good reputation that seeing the band was always like something that people enjoyed seeing, having us play, knowing when to play. I think always was a great thing, and I definitely think I think we definitely brought a lot of good spirit for the
yeah,
school, and
yep.
so it was really nice to see that.
Yeah, and Mr. Z was such a good announcer for the band.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Z was in love with the band.
yeah, yeah.
I would say that it'd probably be his second child if his first child was ASB.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he was a
Yeah.
huge, strong supporter. I was still really good friends with him when I was teaching at
Mhm.
CI. And he was always a very big, passionate person with the band, and he was always on our side. He
Mhm.
would always
Oh yeah, for
help
sure.
us out whenever we
Sure.
needed something. Um, and he was very much, he was like the spirit of CI, and then we were like the group spirit of CI.
Yeah, yeah. Like we were the reflection of his spirit. I think Mr. Z knew the potential that a band can have for school spirit and just the environment. Cause
Yeah,
yeah, cause just imagine going to a football game and like not having the band there. I think it's something that a lot of people take for granted.
yeah,
Just having
yeah. I
that
definitely
noise and that sound.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially in high school, I think
Mhm.
having that in person uh, live music versus like music played
Yeah.
over the speakers, from someone's
Yep.
phone, really kind of adds a nice touch of, I don't know, just like spirit. Really
Mhm.
gets you, feeling like you're really being happy to be part of it. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's nice. It's really nice to be part of that.
Yeah. Let's see. Other topics about drum majoring. Like, what was your favorite thing about being drum major? I think for
Um,
me it was the conducting. That was a
I was
lot of
gonna
fun
say
for me.
that too. I really enjoyed conducting. Um, yeah, I think for those people that I guess didn't hear about it in other ones, but you had mentioned, I think it was, I don't know if it's you or Vince, someone coined the term
Mhm.
the Roque Rock, where like you
It was
rock back
Vince.
and forth when you're conducting.
Yeah.
And like, man, that was like the thing I was known for, like in high
Yep.
school. Um, but then in college, I learned that rocking back and forth is a little bit hard to keep your eye on the person. It's a little bit honestly distracting. Um, and so I learned to not rock back and forth and keep my feet planted in the ground. But yeah,
Yep.
honestly, conducting and I think kind of related to that is looking at the scores,
Uh-huh.
knowing when people
Yeah, yeah.
come in, queuing the people in. I guess it does relate to conducting.
Mhm.
But then even to kind of take it one like level further, listening to one specific instrument's part.
Uh-huh.
One of the things I used to do when I was the drum major, even just when I was in high school band, was I would find the songs we were playing on YouTube. Most of the time, there were like other high school bands playing it,
Yep.
but I would still listen to it, and I'd listen to it on repeat over and over again. And I would do two things. One of the things I would do is I would conduct to it. I would practice my conducting
Mhm.
skills and practice cueing, listening to that. But then another thing I would do is I would each time I listened to it, I would focus on a different part. And if I had the score with
Yep.
me, I'd follow that part the entire way through because most people are used to listening to the part that they play. So let's say if I was playing
Yeah, yeah.
trombone, I know the trombone part, but have you ever listened to the flute part? Have you listened to the sousaphone part?
Mhm.
And when you start doing that, you can kind of see um, it's a really interesting thing because as an audience member, you hear everything together all at once, and it's
Mhm.
it's everything coming together that makes it really cool. But as a conductor, you have the ability to listen to it over and over and over again. And so you can start to hear those little nuances within the score. I don't know if Eduardo talked about it, like talking about reading scores, but it is just
Mhm.
so much you can do with looking at the score and learning about the different parts that conducting and anything to do with reading or conducting the music was really nice. It was nice to be a leader. I think it helped me with my leadership
Yeah,
skills being the drum
yeah.
major. Um, but I don't think it was the most enjoyable part. It was nice to be, the go-to person
Mhm.
in case, people had questions, teachers or other groups had questions, to be that kind of point of contact. Um, but yeah, since you don't really get to play anymore, I
Oh,
think the
I
only
hated
enjoyment
that.
that we
That
get.
was that was my least favorite part about being drum major is that, yeah, you're conducting is a lot of fun, but you're just not playing as
Mhm.
much anymore. That kinda sucks.
Yeah, you learn that when you're a conductor, you don't really get to play anymore, and so you have to put in your own time to practice and play,
Mhm.
because now your job is not to play anymore. Now it's to conduct and kind of cue people when they should be
Yeah.
coming in and stuff like that. But yeah, conducting was definitely a really fun thing.
Yeah, it's more about keeping the beat. And with scores, it's kind of like a puzzle. Everyone in band has like one little piece of the puzzle, but as the conductor, you're putting all these pieces together, how they relate and all that good stuff. So I like
Yeah, man, I
sort of the
like that analogy a
metaphysical
lot.
aspect.
I just take that analogy next time we talk about it.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's what I think of. Um,
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
yeah, conducting was a lot of fun. I think even for me, maybe that's why I still do the homecoming games is to conduct low key.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Conducting is a lot of fun, and then I get to do it in the environment that I'm really good at, which is like the
Mhm.
football game, basketball game environment, the pep game environment. Um, and it's something that I enjoy like teaching to other people and other drum majors. Um, so that they can get really good at it and um they can utilize like that band as a tool to really elevate the environment and spirit of whatever is going on.
Mm.
So that's something I enjoy. The leadership aspects, I'm a fairly like introverted person, so it was a big learning opportunity for me to mature and grow in that way. um, and it's something that if I if I didn't have that experience, I think I would be a different person today.
Yeah.
So it was a big turning point for me, at
Yeah,
least.
I definitely think when you put into that sort of leadership position, you hopefully start to learn, more about being a leader,
Yeah.
and hopefully you learn to, be able to delegate things and learn how to be a
Mhm.
good leader. Um, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But I would say that for most people, the leadership worked out well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There were things that I wasn't very good at, so I would go talk to other people about it. Um, I think when I became drum major, I had to restructure how the band would administer itself and all that, kind of the back end stuff. Um, I brought in like section leaders for meetings. Um, it was just like a more. I try to make it more like communal and not like you know, um, this is what we're doing. Like I have the final say kind of thing. Like I try to get different people's input and
Mhm.
try to make sure that everyone was happy with how the band was being led. And
Yeah.
that's something that I learned from um, being a part or being in band when the big three was around, you, Vincent, and Eduardo.
Mm.
I wanted to change that leadership style because the band was growing um, pretty fast. Like we were going 50, approaching 60. So I think
Mm.
that sort of leadership style where you only have like a concentrated amount of power. Um,
Mhm.
I don't think that was going to work with a group of 50, 60 people. So I had to change up the style, the
Yeah,
leadership
I
style.
definitely think, even as a teacher, you want to let you want to let your students, or you want to let the people
Mhm.
work together, learn how to work together,
Yeah.
and you don't be like that single person that they're getting all their information from.
Mhm.
They can reach out to other people, they can learn from others, and just even having like a very I guess a safe community. I guess that's a way
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
describe it. Being able to be open to share ideas and not be afraid, about what your thoughts or what your ideas are.
Mhm.
So it does, yeah. A lot of the things that you talk about are really, really helpful things in teaching in general. So I think
Uh,
that kind of helped to kind of teach everyone in band to really,
mhm.
get to know each other and work well together.
Right. Yeah. And then also like I can utilize other people's strengths. Like music theory was not my strength. So I knew other people that really got into music theory, um, kind of take over that part, that aspect. So that's why I feel like I wasn't as effective during concert season. Marching season was definitely like my thing, but during concert season, I let other leadership have the spotlight. What else did I want to say? Yeah, just to wrap things up in the past. So let's say you go back in time to see your like 17, 18-year-old self. Like what advice would you give to your 17, 18-year-old self?
Probably just recommend to communicate with other people more,
Uh-huh.
communicate better with them. I talked about earlier that one of the things that I always, look back into is making those executive decisions. And even
Mhm.
though, sometimes those executive decisions need to be made, if you can, it doesn't hurt to go and reach out to other people, see what their thoughts are. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think that's the big one. One of the things I did like, and I think I feel like it's something that's really useful was, as a leader, I wanted to be the first one there and the last one to leave. I always kind of kept that in my mind, and
Mhm.
so like for football games, I would keep that in mind and always try to do that. Um, so I think I'd keep that. But when it comes to, I guess, other advice, yeah, talk to other people, see see what other people think, because it is an entire band. It is not just one person who's in charge of it. There are other
Mhm.
people, very very helpful people as well, who
Yeah.
can give you some good advice.
Yeah. Did you feel like you had a vision of the band and you wanted to control the band to bring the band to your vision?
I think so. I think I definitely had some
Mhm.
really high hopes and high standards for the band. Um, and unless they were like getting paid or like it was their full-time job, I don't think they would have wanted to do it. I guess it kind
Yeah.
of gets into passion. I think I was very passionate about band. I definitely wanted us to be the best, and so I was trying to get everyone else to be on that same level. Not everyone has
Yeah.
that same desire. Not everyone has that same passion. And I
Yeah.
think I think I should have stepped back and realized that, understand that not everyone is there to, I guess, be part of I don't know. It's something that I kind of think back to every now and again, but maybe find other ways to see what can connect people. I mean, if people
Mhm.
really enjoyed just having those friendships, I think that was really nice.
Yeah.
I really think
Yeah.
that just building those connections, I think having a safe group of people to hang out with and talk to was really nice. I
Mhm.
think when I was in high school, my big focus was we need to make sure that not only do we have these good relationships, but we also sound good and we look good and
Yeah.
everything about us is good. So we have like a really good image, and we always get good feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's not such a big precedence. Like for me, when I was a freshman, like, oh crap, I got to be good and all that stuff. So I kind of brought that in like as an upperclassman, but I had to critically think a little bit and think to myself like, hey, do I want to be this strict? So
Mm.
I think I loosened up a little bit. I think at the end of the day, if there's no end goal, then there's no point in being strict and having a strict set of rules and guidelines. I think part of the main thing is just have fun with the band. Like
Yeah, it's
yeah, we
definitely
want to
something that
sound
I did
good.
not see, that I was not thinking about when I was the drum major or when I was in band. It was always just like,
Yeah.
I definitely like this like strict structure. And I
Mhm.
think I want to say Natasha brought that up uh,
Mhm.
during their podcast, that they liked how I feel like I remember that because I think Natasha had come from like a military family or something like that, and that kind of
Mhm.
strictness was still part of it. Um,
Yeah.
but no, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I definitely think that there's a lot of things that I could go back and tell myself and give myself some advice. But it's really nice to reflect. I think
Yeah.
honestly,
Mhm.
being able to look back and say this went well or this didn't go well, and having those reflection points, it really helps you grow. I think
Exactly.
without having
Exactly.
to look back at those events and thinking about it again, It's really difficult to grow and think about, what you could have changed. I think that's one of the things that I instill in my students as well, to make sure you
Oh,
reflect
good.
on what you
That's
did and
good.
stuff like that. See,
That's
it's
good.
all good teaching.
Another thing that Eduardo mentioned was he had a lot of misplaced intensity, and that was sort of my wording on it. But he just put the wrong focus in the wrong thing, if that makes sense. Um, if I remember correctly, in his podcast, he just put too much energy in, let's say, like sounding like really good, for example. He just put too much energy into that he in retrospect he should have spent in like other areas like academics, for example. And
Okay.
it kind of goes in line with that. That sometimes in high school we have like a misplaced focus, and if we could go back, like we would put that focus, somewhere else, something that's more
Mm,
productive. So I think that kind of goes in line with what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Anything else about the past? If not, we'll go to the present.
Oh boy. It's been over 10 years since I
Yeah, I know,
was in
right?
band.
Yeah, I feel
But
old.
I guess to kind of talk, when you say the present, let me fill in some of the gaps that I'd like to
Yeah.
mention. Um, After going to CI, I went to Davis, and I don't think I ever mentioned it during this entire time, but
Mhm.
I was in
Yeah.
the marching band at Davis as well. One of the big reasons why I decided I wanted to go to Davis was because they had a marching band. Of all the
Yep.
UCs, only three of them have marching bands: UCLA, Cal, Berkeley, and Davis. And Davis is one of the lesser known ones of them all.
Hmm.
But one of the things I learned about the Davis band early on before joining it was that it was very similar to CI's band. It was very
Hmm.
student run. It was pretty relaxed. It was pretty much yeah, I guess student run's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I joined the band when I was in college, and I definitely want to say that joining the college marching band was very influential, and it was, honestly, one of my favorite times as well in college. Let's see, I was one of the positions that we had. One of the board, I don't know what you would call officer positions,
Yeah. Yeah.
was a student director, and so it's basically the conducting part of
Hmm.
being the drum major. And so I was able to do that during my last or final year at Davis,
Hmm.
and so I was able to conduct once again. That was really fun. Um, I guess one of the things tying into my college time and uh, your high school time
Hmm.
was that I had gotten into arranging when I started
Yeah.
going to college, and so I arranged a couple pieces, gave a few of them to the band, and during my senior year or during my last year in college, I also did more arrangements as
Yeah.
the student uh, director. Um, so I don't know, it was really nice to be able to arrange. And I think, again, that
Hmm.
kind of, it's almost like going backwards with the
Yeah.
score reading, because like with the
Yeah.
score you see the all parts already, but then now when you're arranging, you have a song that already exists, and now you're trying
Hmm.
to assign different parts to each of the different instruments.
Yeah.
And that was a really fun exercise. Extremely time consuming, but
I
I
bet. Yep.
definitely it was definitely fun. I got so passionate about it every single time. um, Kind of fast forwarding to when I was teaching at I guess you can say
Mhm.
I was able to come back to the band, but this time as a teacher. I was the brass line director, so kind of akin to the drum line director, but for the brass. And
Mhm.
so I would have brass line practices, and so we just go over various music. One of the things that I always looked forward to when I was in college was for Valentine's Day, the trombones and the sousaphones would go around the campus and the
Mhm.
town and play, I guess, Valentine's Day music or just, love songs. And that was something I really enjoyed. And so I brought that back when I was teaching at CI. So I arranged a couple of songs for us to play around the school. and that was very well received. I was really happy to be able to
Mhm.
do that, and it was really nice to honestly come back to the band. You know, a lot of things have changed,
Yeah, yeah.
but I would say the personality of the band was still there.
Mhm,
So it's really nice to see that. Um, let's see, is that everything? Oh, and then the last thing, I guess, it's kind of related to what we're doing right now, is
mhm,
that I'm also part of my alumni band's board. I'm also the director, the conductor for the alumni band, and
mhm,
we're also kind of going through an interview. I guess it's kind of an interview conversation process to kind of see what are the needs of
mhm,
our alumni, because we want to kind of structure our band to meet the needs of our alumni. And so that's actually one of the things I've been working on over the last couple months, is that we're getting in contact with various Davis band alumni to see what are their needs, what are the things that they'd like to
mhm.
see in an alumni group. So
Oh, okay. Nice.
I don't know how much into the I don't know how much into the present you're going to get into, but yeah, we'll go ahead and go into the next part.
Okay. Okay, cool. Um, Going off of what you said about current CI band, I definitely think that they still have the personality of when we were in band. And they've let go of a lot of that intensity, which honestly, like, good for them. I still think you do need a little bit of focus to, at least sound like half decent and good for the band and um,
Mm.
the musicianship and all that. And I think some of that got lost, but I think overall it's a good thing that they sort of loosen up and relaxed, at least
Yeah,
from the strictness side.
yeah, one of the things that I enjoyed seeing was the camaraderie. I guess that's kind of what I meant by the
Yeah.
personality, just to see how,
Mhm.
they were still silly. They were still really good friends with each other. It wasn't just a group
Mhm.
to play music with, but it was also your friends.
Yep.
And I think that's one
Mhm.
of the nice things about just bands in general.
Yeah.
You develop these really good friendships with people, and they become really good friends. And so it's nice to see that.
Mhm.
I think one of the things I don't really remember doing that much when I was a drum major, but they really do a lot of they're really heavy on sectionals. A lot of the times when
Oh,
I'd see
that's
them practicing after
uh-huh.
school is they'd be doing sectionals, and then they'd bring everyone back together at the end and then work together as a
Oh, that's
full
good.
band. So
Yeah, that might be for my time. So,
yeah, and so they work really well. In their sections, their section leaders are making sure that they're memorizing things, and it's really nice to see.
that's good. Yeah, during my time, what I had the band do was that, we would break off into, sectionals, but you would have the band room for your section for, like, a certain day.
Mm.
So trumpets we got Monday, right? So on Mondays we would have, after school rehearsal with the whole band. And then when that rehearsal finished, trumpets would have sectionals on Monday in the band room. We would have the whole band room to ourselves. We could do whatever we want. Sometimes we goofed off because we're trumpet players. um, but yeah, every section followed that schedule. So I think it was trumpets on Monday, saxophones on Tuesday, low brass on Wednesdays, so on and so forth. And maybe that's where that's from, but it was a pretty, I wouldn't say strict, but like predictable schedule. It's like, oh, all right, Mondays trumpets, we're coming in today. Make sure
Wait,
you block out the time.
what are the other things that I noticed when I was a teacher there versus when I was
Hmm.
a student? When I was a drum major, I wanted to have more officer meetings,
Uh-huh.
um, and so I would try to schedule having these officer meetings, but I don't remember having that many. Whereas when I was a teacher
Hmm.
at CI, um, they I would say almost constantly had officer meetings, and
Yeah.
it seemed like they went on for sometimes hours. And it was very surprising to me to see how often they would have those meetings, and I guess how long the discussions were. Um, it seemed like you probably would want to. I guess I don't know how often Terrell was involved in it, but yeah, I think getting an adult's perspective, I think, would be
Hmm.
important.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
After you have all the discussions within from the students, try to get an adult's perspective, see what they
Mhm.
think. Because I don't know, I was never part of those officer meetings. but it just seemed like something that would take up a lot of the section leaders and I guess other officers' time. It was very time consuming for them.
Yep.
But it was something that I had wanted to do when I was
Mhm.
drum major, which I wasn't able to get into like a routine for. So it's nice to see that they are doing it, but it seems like it's a little bit more than what's needed. But
Yeah, I think
I don't know what's going on with the meetings, but I know that they're holding a lot of
yeah.
them.
Yeah, it can be excessive. I don't want to pat my own back again, but when I was drum major, we had monthly leadership meetings. So that was with the core leadership, which is like the president, drum major, vice president, all that, treasurer. Um, there was sort of, I guess, the auxiliary leadership was mainly the section leaders from the band and from drumline, and sometimes the drumline officers would come in, but we would mainly just have the drumline captains come in, just so we didn't have like too many people. Um, but we had those meetings monthly, and I don't know, it might be from that time, but I think meeting like weekly, I think that might be a little bit too excessive. Um, there were some other things that I incorporated, like band battles. We went during my time. We did it very sparingly. It was like a special occasion. Um, but sometimes when I would come back, like they would have band battles like every week. It's like, guys, this is a little, it's a little excessive. So
Are you talking about like splitting the band in half and then just playing music? Yeah,
yep,
I see.
yep. Um, so when I was drum major, we did that mainly when we were bored, like when we were like waiting for like a rally to finish or something like that, or before a football game. Um, but I definitely think like after my time, sometimes I got a little bit too excessive with the band
Mhm.
battles. It seems like they were doing it just like every week, which I think is a little bit too much. Uh, but yeah, it sounds like a lot of the good things stuck throughout the years, and it's nice hearing it from a teacher's perspective.
Yeah, I definitely think it's good to do kind of what you were saying, where what was the point of doing it? And so having that end game
Yeah,
is really important. And I think
yeah,
it's something whenever there's new leadership to kind of look back on. And I think that's why it's really important to have like some, I wouldn't say constitution, but like as something to look back
yeah.
on to see the reasoning why
Mhm.
there's this thing or why do we do this to kind of like say like we've been doing this like it seems like it's a tradition to do but then to see what is the purpose of it um
Yep.
and kind of I guess kind of ground yourself and be like really think back and reflect, I guess is what we were saying. uh
Mhm.
is there a purpose to this? And so I think it's always good to do that, kind of step back and say, what is the point of this? What was the original intention? How has it changed now? And it
Yeah,
definitely takes some time to do that, and it does take getting to know, I guess, former officers as well, because
yeah,
it's stuff like things that were invented when we were there, that still stuck around that they don't know the origins behind, and so
yeah,
to keep some sort of like I keep thinking about a constitution for some reason, but
yeah,
just something that has the information as to this is what we do. We do this because of this.
mhm.
I think just some sort of thing. I think we had made that drum major manual many
Yeah,
years ago um, as a good reference for the drum majors, and it was nice that I think we updated it every now and again because times change, things change.
yeah,
Um, and so having something like that, I think, is just good for any organization, just to kind of refer back to and be like, is there a reason that we have to keep doing this? And if not, then let's change it. Let's use that
yeah.
time for something else that can be productive.
Yeah, I actually ran into that guide maybe a couple weeks ago, like, "Oh, this is the thing. Let me give it to the current drum major." And it turns out that they were already passing it down to, like, any new or current drum majors, so, it's nice seeing it, like, in circulation. The only thing is that you can't really edit it, unless I'm doing it because I'm using, like, latex. I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. Um, what else was I gonna say about that? Oh, band constitution. before I graduated high school, I actually held a lot of leadership meetings to draft a band constitution because I knew like we didn't have a lot of things set in stone. So we had a ton of meetings of drafting this band constitution that never made it to the light of day, unfortunately. Um, because by the time I left, like we didn't finish it, and I depended on like the future leadership to continue it, but they never did.
Yeah.
So I mean that kind of sucks, but I mean what can you do?
Yeah.
uh, okay, let's go into the present. So what I mean by present, I guess what I mean from like a personal, I guess in our point of view, like academic standpoint, from like when you graduated high school to now. I know you went over it a little bit, but are there any like gaps that you missed?
No, I think I hit everything chronologically.
uh,
So let me just re-review from
yeah, quick summary.
2010 to 2014. I was at Davis, their marching band. I would usually over the summers I'd come back to band camp and say hi. Um, and I also I one of the things one of the oh I just remembered Disgruntled Avians too.
Oh yeah,
That was
yeah,
a pretty cool project. But
yeah.
anyway, um,
Oh
20
man.
2015 to 2017, I was at Davis for my teacher credential and my master's. From 2016 to now, I've been teaching, but my first year was middle school science. The
Mhm,
next 2 years was high school biology at CI, and then the last 2 years have been elementary school science. Is I already talked about it, but it was
yeah,
it
yeah.
was nice to come back to CI, see how things have changed, and see if I can incorporate some of the stuff that I had enjoyed doing in my college years at
Mhm,
CI. One of the things I mentioned was the trombones, going around and playing
uh-huh.
the Valentine's music, and so it was really nice to bring that. I'm not sure if they do that still. It's definitely something that I
Mhm,
spearheaded, um, but to try to bring in new things.
mhm,
To see how they work out. Some things are hit and miss, and so it might work out, it might not. But it's always nice to try to test it out and see what reaction was. One of the things that I'd been doing many times throughout, I guess, from when I graduated all the way till now, is I've been
mhm,
arranging. There were some times that I would arrange a lot. I would do a lot of the times is when um, over the summer I would take the
uh-huh.
most popular songs of that summer and create timeout versions of them. I think they're called timeout versions, like the ones that you'd fit like
Uh,
20, 30 second snippets of the song. And that was
Short.
something that I would do, like, yeah, shorts. There you
Mhm,
go. That was something I was really passionate about every
mhm,
summer. And so I did that almost every single summer, sending those over to CI's band to play. And when I was also the student director of the college band, I did a lot more full arrangements for us to
mhm,
perform. Um, and my latest one, it's something that's been shelved for a while
mhm.
because of the pandemic. But
Yeah.
I arranged the horn parts. And when I say horns, I mean everything except for the drum part um, of Dancing in the Moonlight.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so I have the horn part, and I asked one of my college friends, who's a drummer, if he could arrange the drum part.
Uh-huh.
But the pandemic happened, and so it's been something that's
Yeah.
been sat on for a while. Um, but again, it's something that's really time consuming. You really have to listen to the song over
Yeah.
and over again,
Mhm,
and you want to see like how accurate do you want to be, what parts you want to arrange, and then even after you arrange it, like there's all this stuff about formatting when you're printing it out, and
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that usually actually
Yeah.
uses up a lot of your time as well. And so yeah, just the arranging aspect was something that popped up like almost every single year from when I graduated up until now.
Yeah,
And it's really nice exercise, honestly.
yeah. Another concern was like copywriting, because Cal Poly's band,
Yeah.
that's a big thing that we were very cautious of, was like copyright infringement. So that's why we in Cal Poly's band we don't have student arrangements,
Oh, I
unfortunately.
completely understand.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean Davis. I would say 90% of the songs were student arrangements, and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's exactly what you were saying. It's the copyright thing in that
yeah.
we weren't a big name school. We weren't
Mhm,
so. I mean, when I thought about the UCs and marching bands, Davis is not one of the ones that come to mind.
mhm.
It's always UCLA and then
Yep,
Cal. Especially if you live in like Northern California, it's definitely one of the
yep.
big ones. First, it was UCLA because we lived in Southern California, but
Yeah,
Davis
yeah,
was not one of the ones that came to mind. And so it was a surprise to me to learn that they had a marching band when I was applying to colleges. And so
yep.
because we weren't really so worried about that. We just created a bunch of these student arrangements. The problem is, once we started becoming a more well-known school, I would say probably in the mid right around when I was one of the officers there. So I would say 2014 or
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
we started to be, I guess, even thinking about sports related for our basketball team. Our basketball team around that time, we made it to like the March Madness, which is
Mhm.
something that never happened before. And so, it was important to get those copyrights. Another thing was our football shows. What we decided to do was we wanted to put them on YouTube. The problem is you need to make sure you have permission from that whatever licensing company it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
And so we actually spent a good amount of money on the licenses of those
Oh, wow.
songs so
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we would actually be able to post it onto YouTube. Because a lot of the songs that we had arranged didn't have the copyrights to, and
Yep.
so that was a really big shift um, as we were going. We had been working on it right about when I was about to graduate, but we'd
Uh-huh.
continued and made sure that we started licensing songs more and more
Mhm.
because of
That's good.
we wanted to make a name for ourselves, and we can't just make these arrangements and be like, yeah, these are our arrangements without giving credit to where credit's
Yeah, yeah.
due.
Yep.
Um, so it was nice. It was nice to be able to do that. But then when you start becoming more
Mhm.
well known, you have to actually start following the rules.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So it was that was one of the challenges.
Mhm.
And it's just a money issue. So
Yeah, a lot of our pieces at Cal Poly, um, were, they were like the JW Pepper, like it's
mm,
kind of cookie
stock
cutter.
arrangements.
Yeah, very stock arrangements. And I remember when Cal Poly and Davis would have their band battles and Davis was playing, like we would just stand there for so long because your guys' arrangements were just so much longer.
Yeah,
And we were
they're
like, well, like, when are we playing? Like, I
yes,
remember that.
we
That was,
definitely made like literally the entire song. And so it would not be like
yeah.
a shortened version of the song. It'd be like, you want to hear um, I'm trying to think of the songs we have. The impression that I get. Here's the entire song
Mhm.
of the impression that I get. um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was one of the things that I would say that we were known for, having full length song arrangements.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I appreciate, just as an audience member and spectator. I mean, it was a little annoying as a Cal Poly band member, but whatever. That's something that I kind of expected from Davis's band.
Yeah.
After a while. So, but yeah, I didn't know about all the copyright, issues. Like we didn't really have that issue because we're
Yeah.
we're just playing, JW Pepper arrangements for the most part.
Mm.
Um, we do have a lot of, like, I guess, legacy pieces. Whether I don't know if they're copyrighted or not, they probably are.
Mm.
Um, I think even our fight song is like copyrighted. Like we
Oh, really?
we yeah, I think we had to make it a I think we had to make a, like, modification. We had to, like, add bar or something to, like, create, like, a new arrangement. I don't know. I think halfway through my Cal Poly career, we had a different version of our two fight songs. It was just like
Oh,
an
how
extra
interesting.
bar, but yeah. I don't know the exact details because I wasn't like as hooked in to college band as I was with CI's bands. And that was on purpose, just because I focused more on academics, when I went to college versus band.
Yeah.
And academics did kick my butt. So I had to dedicate a lot of time for academics in college. Does teaching line up with what your high school self wanted to do?
No. The short answer is no. I
Okay.
didn't realize how much how much you don't see the teachers do. And what I mean by that is there's the planning, there
Uh-huh.
are many meetings, there's the grading as well. So the
Yeah.
time that you see your teacher is just a fragment of what goes on in their lives.
Yeah.
One of the things that you probably saw is that there are a good amount of teachers that would stay after school,
Mhm.
sometimes even like into the evening hours.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's just, for them, it's normal. It's normal to stay that late to grade things, to prepare for the next day's lesson. Um, and so that came as a big shock to me
Uh-huh.
when I first started teaching, to see all this kind of, I guess, behind the scenes stuff that I didn't realize. Because when I was in high school, I was like, yeah, I'd love to learn all this stuff and then just, I guess,
Mhm.
regurgitate it uh, for the next people so that they can
Yeah.
learn about it. And that's definitely not what teaching was all about. And I learned that as I was going through, um, I guess, just my college experience.
Mhm.
I did a lot of internships for education during my undergrad, and so I was pretty well prepared when I was doing student teaching during my grad school years, and just to see how much time and effort is being put into each of the teachers.
Uh-huh.
It was quite a big shock, and to be honest, it overworked me for the first few years. Um, I would be spending almost every single night, starting from right when work ended, which was like at around like 5 or 6, and I
Yeah.
would still be working up until around midnight, getting
Oh,
things
wow.
ready for the next day.
That's crazy.
But it really destroyed me. It was really something that was not helpful for my life. Um, and so it's something that I was really glad to get some help for, to kind
Yeah.
of learn to separate my work life from my school life. And now that I've learned to do that, now that I've kind of stopped and said, okay, I'm going to work until like this time. Let's say it's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock,
Mhm.
I'm going to call it quits, and I'm going to just go home and just focus on home stuff.
Mhm.
Doing that has really improved my um, I guess my well-being,
Yeah.
because I think going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning was that I was very focused on academics,
Mhm.
and so by being so focused on academics, I always wanted to make things the best they could be. And so that was
Mhm.
what I did when I started teaching. Was I always tried to make things the best that they could be. I wanted to make the lesson the best that I could, and the only way I'd make a really good lesson is if I really put a lot of time and effort into it. And so it turned out that it was not a healthy way to do it. It was not
Mhm.
something that um, helped my. It didn't help at all. And so I had to tell myself that it's okay to stop working at 5 o'clock. It's okay to um, okay if your lesson's not the best. And it was really tough to kind of put that idea in my mind. But I did, and I had to force myself to stop working at a certain time.
Mhm.
And once I did that, I started enjoying teaching more. Um, this year is a little bit of a struggle because of how
Yeah.
everything's been different. Everything's been kind of thrown out of whack, and trying to get a routine back has always been difficult this year.
Yeah.
I did start the year by teaching at the school. It was still virtual, but I was at the school.
Mhm.
But the thing was, I think around Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
um, someone at the school had COVID,
Uh-huh.
and so then they asked us to stay at home. And ever since then, I've been very wary to go back to
Right.
school. I
Yeah, that
have
makes
been
sense.
there a couple times, but now I've just started teaching from home again, which is what I'd been doing from March to probably August.
Mhm.
I actually even taught summer school as well, and so that was going to be
Okay.
virtual. That was virtual as well. Um, and so my routine's always changing, and so to try to even get like a constant routine going on is always it's been really difficult. And on top
Mhm.
of the usual stuff of being a teacher, um, so
Uh-huh.
it was a pretty big shock to me when I became a real teacher versus what I saw a teacher, what I thought a teacher was in high school.
Mhm.
But I was able to figure out a way to balance everything, and
Mhm.
now things are a lot better.
Oh, that's good. Did you put a high standard on yourself, and that's what drove the extra time and effort?
I I think so. I definitely think knowing the way I was in high school and knowing how I always wanted to be very um, holding things to high standard, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Having that still be my mindset and being like you can't you're not done until it's perfect. Yeah, so
Yeah.
with that mindset, I definitely think it threw things off. But even still now, even though I stop, at 5 o'clock and I don't really think about work anymore. My lessons are still good. I'm still able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
provide really good lessons for the kids, and so it doesn't take many hours of time to get a lesson that's really good. You have to make sure that you are feeling well yourself to be able to make a good
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta make sure it comes out organically, I guess.
Yeah,
Might be the word. I mean, I'm not a teacher. I don't have the experience. But yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of stress like on yourself to be like the perfect, version of a teacher. Um,
yeah. I definitely think I think a lot of that did stem from my high school experience as well.
mm,
Just trying to be, one of the best. Trying to be the top of always a good student, always getting those A's.
yeah.
And so I transferred that into being a teacher, which didn't work out at all, and it was very, very,
Mhm.
it was very tough my first few years. I definitely, I definitely had many times when I was starting
Mhm.
teaching, I was like, man, do I really want to be a teacher? Um, then once I was able to separate that work, once I was able to put a stop to when I was going to keep working, and actually focus on my own self after like 5 o'clock each day, things
Mhm.
turned out a lot better. So I was able to really learn from that experience.
Oh, that's good. What other details about being a teacher that most people don't know should should we know about, or like what's some, like, I don't know, I guess fun facts of being a teacher that we don't normally think about?
Oh man, that's a really good question. Um, well, there are a lot of meetings that we have to do.
Okay. So
These
what kind of
meetings,
meetings yeah,
yeah, the meetings can include things from meeting with, I guess it depends on your grade level, but like
yeah.
meeting with your grade level or meeting with your subject areas.
Yeah.
There's those meetings. There's also whole staff meetings. Usually those are weekly kind of things. In addition, there are meetings I guess you can think of like informal meetings with students or their parents to talk about something,
Mhm.
whether good or bad, usually bad. Um, and then there's also, there are meetings for things called IEPs. An IEP is an individualized education plan, and they're usually for students that have some sort of learning disability or something
Uh-huh.
that's um, some sort of, I guess, disability that's preventing them from learning well or just in the normal learning environment. And so those meetings, legally, you have to have a general education teacher.
Mhm.
And a general education teacher is the teachers that you would, a typical teacher you would expect to find. There are special education teachers.
Uh-huh.
I'm sure you probably know about them. And then another interesting thing that I think I wasn't aware of when I was in high school, when I thought of special education, I always thought of the students with like very severe learning disabilities.
Mhm.
And so I came to realize as I learned to be, when I was becoming a teacher, that it's not always something that you see. It's not
Yeah.
always a very severe version of a learning disability. It could be something, um, could be something as like ADHD. It could be something as like, you know, having a hard time focusing. It could be there's a very large range of different learning disabilities,
Uh-huh.
and I guess you just learn about those as well too. One of the things that we had needed to, one of the classes we had to take was learning about the different types of um, disabilities that
Uh-huh.
students can have. Another thing is that we have to make sure that um, our lessons and our curriculum are they're they're for English learners as well as just normal, or I guess English only speakers.
Mhm.
One of the things I didn't realize, I guess, as much when I was a high schooler, was just the amount of experience that people have with the English language and how people get designated as an English learner versus like an English only. You
Yeah.
also learn that there's different levels of English learner. And so with the different levels, um, there's different, not necessarily different classes. They could be different classes for the different levels of English learning or level of English that you have. Um, but man, there's just, I guess there's so many little nuances that you didn't realize were there when you were a high school student,
Yeah.
unless you were in those classes. Me being in the honors and AP classes, I never got to see these
Right.
students.
Right.
Or if I did, then you know, I didn't really notice them. But now that I've been teaching a lot of non-honors and non-AP classes, I remember when I first wanted to start teaching, I was like, I'd love to teach the AP classes. And you know, being one of the newer teachers, you don't get to do that. It's typically something
Uh-huh.
for you know, the veteran teachers. And so I
Right.
was always with the normal um, classes, and so
Mhm.
I started to see and learn about all these different types of students. And not everyone is an AP student, and I
Mhm.
think it was a kind of a bit of a shock to me that there were people like that. And so being put in those situations to be able to see that there are these, you know, non-honors and non-AP students, I think it was a really big shock to me at first. But now that I've
Mhm.
been teaching for 5 years, I've come to say that that's the normal thing, that not everyone is in love with science. Not everyone
Yeah.
is passionate about school. And so now my job is to motivate the kids, not even just
Yeah.
motivate them for science, but just motivate them in general. And that's what I
Right.
was talking about
Mhm.
at the very beginning, where it's really important to form that connection and bond with the students. Um, because, you know, even though you might think that something like, as a science teacher, I might think a science lesson is really awesome. There could be many different needs that the students have. There could be things going on at home that you don't know that's causing them to not be able to focus.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of things you learn about students. There's a lot of things you learn about the way people learn. There's a lot of things that you learn about people's home lives.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of ways that you learn about the school system and
Mhm.
I guess just the American school system in general. Learn how important attendance is. The school gets money based on how many people attend, and that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why attendance is one of those big things that the schools push for.
Yep.
Because if
Mhm.
students aren't coming, then the school's not getting money. You also learn about the different ways that schools get money. There's different committees that you could be on. Um, and you get some money from the state, you get some money from the district, and there's different sources of money, and you have to learn how to fill out the correct forms to get
Uh-huh.
money from those different ones. There's a good amount of paperwork that has to be filled out if you want to be
Yeah.
reimbursed.
So that sounds like a
Um,
lot of red tape.
yeah, and there, there's just so many things that I did not realize when I was going to become a teacher that I'm still learning,
Mhm.
even though it's my fifth year. I have to say that I've never actually hit tenure. Most teachers, or a teacher has tenure once they've taught in the same district for 3 years. This is
Uh-huh.
my third district, and it's my second year
Yeah.
in this district, so I've never actually hit tenure before. So theoretically, I could, there's a good, I wouldn't say there's a good chance, but there's a chance that I could be not be tenured, that I could be like, not have a job next year. It's very
Uh-huh.
unlikely, but there's that chance. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think another thing, and just very, very specific to this year, is that last year, June, so June during the pandemic, there was a very, very big rise in teachers retiring.
Oh,
So
what was that?
I, I mean, it was in the news as well. And so just it's very interesting to see what's going to be the repercussions of that.
Uh-huh.
Even when I was going to um, grad school for teaching, um, the discussion of retirement was already there. And the reason why it was there is because teachers don't pay into Social Security. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
typically one of the things that I think a lot of other businesses usually you pay into
Yeah.
to get money for.
Yeah, that's forced in our pay statement. Like they take a certain percentage. I forgot, but I think it's like 2%, 3%, something like that, where they take money
Yeah.
out for Social Security.
So that's not the case for teachers. And so a lot of the times, teachers have to create other or have other accounts to
Uh-huh.
save for retirement because they're not paying into Social Security. Um, and so what you're making now, unless you're saving for when you retire, it will not be the same that you get when you do retire. Um, yeah, man, I can go on with just so many of the things that I learned. But it is a lot to I guess it's a lot to take in, but
Yeah.
to kind of go on the flip side, you are one of the people that children see every day, most of the
Mhm.
days. You are one of the people that really get to know these kids and really get to, I guess, first of all, teach them. But in addition to teaching them, you really get to know them as a person as well. You get to know what
Yeah.
their likes are, their dislikes are. If you're lucky enough, you get to know their families. You get to really see them as a person versus just another student.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the nice things about being a teacher is that you get to develop these relationships that you hope that you make a change for these kids. And one of the things I learned very, very early on is that you may make a difference in a kid's life, but it may not be until 10, 20 years into the future
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they realize that you'd made that difference, whether it be talking to someone like, yeah, Miss blah 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 was like such a cool teacher, blah blah blah. And
Mhm.
so it's great to hear about that. And what I would encourage anybody who had a very influential teacher in their life is to reach out to them, let that teacher know
Yeah.
that they were really helpful in to where helping you get to where you are now.
Mhm.
I think that's one of the rewards that teachers don't get to see, because yes, they help a student, but then that's usually only for a year, and so after that, you
Yeah.
may not see that kid ever again.
Right.
Um, it's easier in probably like the middle or high school where it's like after you graduate, you can come back and say hi to them.
Mhm.
But now as an elementary teacher, I don't know if I'll ever see those kids again.
Mhm.
I don't know if they'll ever remember me. And so I'm always hoping that I have created some sort of difference in their life, even just a little one. That'll definitely make things worthwhile for me. And as a teacher, you don't see that immediately. You usually
Mhm.
don't see that for many years. So yeah, that's the only thing I'd ask for everybody who's listening.
Uh-huh.
If there was a teacher who really made a difference in your life, who really helped you out, let them know, even out of the blue. I think it's great to hear that reaching out to former teachers is something, even if you don't think they remember you, just say, hey, I was in your class and you may not remember me, blah, blah, blah. But I wanted to thank you, blah, blah, blah. And
Mhm.
it's interesting because, even though you might not think that a teacher remembers you, they might actually. Um,
Mhm.
so that's definitely something that is very it's nice to know about teachers that
Mhm.
they do feel that sense of reward, but sometimes it takes a long time to get that reward, I guess.
I see. Yeah, funny you mentioned that. My eighth grade science teacher found me on Facebook, and she added me. I was surprised that she still remembers me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she added me on Facebook. I was at first I thought like, who is this person? Because I didn't recognize her last name. Because she went by Miss Johnson, but I guess that was her maiden name. I think. Um, but yeah, I added her on Facebook. I messaged her, thank you for being such a great teacher and all that. I remember being such a teacher's pet for her. Like, just, I don't know why. When I went to Disneyland with the band at Blackstock, um, I bought two of those like really big circular lollipops, and I got two of them for Miss Johnson's sons. I don't really know why I did that. I just did it. um, and I remember she wrote like a nice card, thanking me and all that. I probably still have the card somewhere in my room, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mentioned all that, and thank you for my interest in the science, because eventually I go into computer science and all that, which led to my career. Um, so I told her my college path and how that got into my career path, and I just told her, I guess, my successes, and um, how her eighth grade science class were like one of the origins of that. So it's funny that you mentioned that, because I recently went through that situation.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to a couple of my elementary teachers as well.
Mhm.
I got mixed reception. Some of them I had a hard time getting in contact with, like for my fifth grade teacher. I found him on
Yeah.
Facebook because I remember his son. He just had his son when I was in his class, and so I was able to find him.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think one of the things about Facebook is that if you're not friends with the person, you send them a message, I don't think they get notified, or it goes into like some
Oh, yeah, yeah,
other
yeah.
thing. And so it took him like a few months to actually respond to my message. And then I was able to reach out to my fourth grade teacher
Mhm.
because when I was still going to CI, she was what's called a mentor teacher. And during your first 2 years of teaching, there's this program in California called actually, I don't know what they call it anymore. They keep changing names. It used to be called induction,
Uh-huh.
where you basically have a mentor teacher to guide you, and they're going to be your teacher to help. They're going to be the person that if you have any questions for during your first 2 years of teaching, you can talk to them.
Oh, okay.
There's a whole thing about that in terms of like if it's a person at your school, if it's someone in the same subject, it could get really complicated. But anyway, I knew I when I was at one of the final, I guess I don't know if it's graduation ceremonies of it. I heard the name. She had a very specific last name, and so hearing that, I was like, "Huh, I wonder if
Mhm.
that's her." And so I decided to. I think I looked her up on Facebook, and I think I was able to find her, and I was able to get in contact with her, and I think she remembered me, and she always remembers how she does she basically she regrets not regrets but she had a very difficult time when I was in her class.
Yeah.
She It was her first time teaching a combo class. A combo class is where you have two
Mhm.
classes in one. She was teaching both fourth and fifth grade at the same time, and I finally learned the reason why those exist
Oh,
as
really?
an elementary teacher.
Oh.
Yeah, basically it's dependent on the class size, the entire or grade level class size.
Oh,
So
makes
if
sense.
there's restrictions in terms of like how many kids you can have in a class, let's say there's 32 kids you can have in a
Mhm.
class, and for the third grade class, you have, let's see, whatever 32 times 2 plus like, I don't know, 13 is. So then
Yeah.
you have two classes worth, but then you have like, I don't know, did I say 13? You have
Mhm.
13 that don't make a full class. So what do you do with that? You take some kids from a adjacent level, so like the
Huh.
fourth grade class, and you create that combo class. And so that's why I was always wondering, why do combo classes exist? And that's exactly why they exist.
Oh.
It's a discrepancy in the
Hmm.
amount of teachers or the amount of I guess the
Students?
amount of students a teacher
Yeah.
can have based
Yeah.
on whatever contract they have with the district. But anyway, my fourth grade teacher, she was always like, "Oh, I'm sorry that I was a new teacher, blah blah blah." And I was like, "No, you don't. You don't need to apologize. I really enjoyed your class. I really, I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed being in your class. And then, it's one of the reasons I want to reach out just to say hi, and thank you for that as well." So I guess it could be mixed when you reach out to your teachers. It's not always going to be they may not always remember you. I think in middle school and high school, it's a lot easier. I think you make a
Yeah,
little
because
bit.
you remember those
Yeah, I
times a lot
think it's
easier.
it's a bit more memorable. And like honestly, when I think back to my elementary school like science days, I don't really remember that much. I do remember
Yeah, same.
I did have a specific teacher for science,
Yeah,
which was I thought very interesting because in elementary school it's usually one teacher that teaches all the subjects.
right.
But I do distinctly remember having a science teacher in fourth
Yeah,
grade,
me too.
separate from my English or I guess my regular core homeroom teacher.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but now, I think it doesn't hurt to try to reach out and just be like, you had a really good, really big impact in my life, and I wanted to just
Mhm.
reach out and say thank you. Um, I think that'd be really appreciated. I would definitely appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so, I think that's one of the things that um, I think that's one of the things that someone can do to brighten a teacher's day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would think also like as a teacher, it would be nice to see how your former students are doing, just where they are in life.
Yeah.
If they've succeeded, you were part of their path, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, so it'd be nice to hear I would think as a teacher, if I were a teacher, it would be nice to hear that. Have you noticed a big difference between teaching in the Oxnard area versus teaching in the Bay Area?
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's extremely more diverse here.
yeah. Hmm.
Like there are so many different nationalities that
Hmm.
I didn't even maybe even thought about when I was in CI. I mean, in
Yeah.
CI, it's like Mexican, Filipino, uh, maybe a little black, maybe a little bit of white, maybe Vietnamese. And
Yeah.
so I think that's just the way that Oxnard is, just
Yeah.
demographically. There's nothing you
Yeah.
can change about that. But then once I went to Northern California to see the diversity of my students and see the different places that they or their parents came from,
Mhm.
it's astounding to learn more about
Yeah.
different cultures. I think I've learned so much more about other cultures here than
Mhm.
I would have if I stayed in Oxnard because
Yeah.
Oxnard
Yeah.
is very um, I guess Latino, Latina,
Yeah, it's
Mexican, Hispanic.
yeah.
It's a very strong in those roots.
Mhm.
There's some pockets of Filipino here and there, um, but to learn about other nationalities, honestly, I think you trying to think if anyone else is Vietnamese, and so I'm like,
Yeah. I was
like
I was looking at a
aside from
graph.
you,
I was looking at a graph of the demographic of the Oxnard area, and Hispanic, Latino, it's like 71%. And then the
mhm,
next bracket is white at 14%. So there's a huge disparity between, the top 70% versus, everyone else. So that's definitely like a big it's a big influence in, the environment and in the city in terms of
and
culture.
then even specifically at CI, I don't even think the demographics
Yeah.
of Oxnard reflect CIs because I feel like I honestly thought there were a lot more Filipinos than Mexicans at CI, but it turns out there are a lot of Mexicans. I would say that it's still close to that 75%. And I feel like the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
percentage would be Filipino. You can probably look it up online. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, so I think being able to learn about different cultures and see firsthand other people
Mhm.
really opened my eyes to see that there's more than just Mexican and Filipino.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's very interesting to think because one of the things that had been brought up to me was that most of my friends are Filipino, and I think
Yeah.
back to them like, yeah, it is. It turns out it is, and I think you're the only friend that I had that is Vietnamese. It's still Asian, but yeah,
different
and so it
different
was like,
different
man,
ethnicity. Yeah.
yeah. So it was pretty interesting to think about that. Yeah, that it just I think that's why diversity is very important. That's why I definitely think seeing different cultures can be eye-opening, and I think it's really
Yeah,
important for kids to see that there are different cultures um, and get to experience them. Because I think if they are like me when I was growing up, not seeing and learning about other cultures, then you don't really get to see what else exists outside of the world,
yeah,
or at least
yeah.
outside of your world.
Mhm.
And so I'm really happy that I'm able to learn about more cultures and learn about other people.
Yeah. Um, from my experience, I was pretty much like a minority in a minority majority city, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like Filipinos are considered Asians, but I wasn't like a Filipino per se, or I wasn't like
We're
strictly
part of
like
the
in the clique.
majority minority.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for me growing up, it definitely set me up in some like interesting situations. I always felt like very, very alone. Um, so I got very, very used to just being by myself, like culturally, if that makes
Mm.
sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that
I
and
can
that
see
kind
it
of
now
bled
as a
into like
teacher.
yeah, yeah, and that kind of bled into other parts of my life. Um, and I don't know. It's very like I'm very used to being like by myself in that regard. So when I went to Cal Poly and it was just a different climate, it didn't really shock me that much. I like to say like just change the Hispanic to white in terms of the demographic percentages, and that was slow. Like
Mhm.
I was already like fairly familiar with like that disparity, so I was like, whatever. It's like this is like the same thing. Um,
Mhm.
but
Oh yeah, happy belated Lunar New Year.
oh yes, that's why I have the dragon right
Oh, I see.
there. You can only see like let me see if I can get the top
Oh, interesting.
part.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah, it's a big deal in Vietnamese culture. It's like a bigger deal than like regular New Year's and birthdays and
I
anniversary and
would
Christmas.
honestly would not have known that or learned about that had I not gone to Northern California
Yeah,
and seen
yeah,
how many different cultures celebrate the Lunar New Year. Chinese, Vietnamese. Yeah, it was eye opening because like I'd lived my whole
yeah,
life in Oxnard, and I was very, I guess it's sheltered is the best way to describe it. I had not learned about other cultures aside
yeah.
from Filipino. Um, so getting that chance to see other cultures and being in an environment that is very inclusive to very other cultures, um,
Mhm.
it's been really nice. It's been really great.
Oh, yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, I have an uncle that's Filipino, and I asked him if Lunar New Year was like a big deal over in the Philippines. He's like, no, not really. uh,
I don't know if anyone
um,
knows about the Lunar New Year in the Philippines.
yeah, but over in Vietnam, it's like a month-long celebration. It's like it's strange because growing up over here as like a Vietnamese American, I don't know the intensity of like how like celebratory it is. Um,
Mm,
it's just things that I hear about from my parents or like things I see, but I never get to like experience it because again, like Oxnard, it's majority like Hispanic, so what we don't really have those opportunities to um be in that sort of celebration and have those festivals and all that. But like
yeah,
apparently it's a big deal, and it's kind of sad that I don't really get to experience that. Um,
yeah.
one of the things at Cal Poly was that playing at the New Year parade, that was like a big deal for me. It's like yes, that was a lot of fun for
I guess
me,
yeah.
and and it was strange because I think it was like our first year playing. We didn't really play any like Lunar New Year related music, so
Mhm.
I was sort of like internally screaming at the band because Cal Poly and Slow is a majority white, so I'm like internally screaming like, "Yo, this is not what we should playing. We shouldn't be playing AC/DC." It's like, uh, um, But I think the year after that, we mixed it up and we played more like traditional music along with our
It's
other
good.
Cal Poly stuff. So
You guys actually always won first place ever since you guys started coming to
yeah,
the New Year parade. Like there would be two
yeah,
bands, two college bands, and there'd be a first and a second place, and Davis would always get second place.
yeah. You know why? It's because of Georging. Georging is super fun. It's our
Yeah,
synchronized
think
dancing when we're
I think they
marching.
really enjoyed seeing that. Like, oh, they're much better than a military band, so we'll give them the award.
Yeah, yeah. I think you guys are more of a, or Davis is more of a show band like when you guys are playing. But when we're marching, like we're more of a show band. I don't know, it's kind of like a weird dynamic.
Mm.
Like we don't really like march. Like when we're marching, we're always doing something. And I think it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
um,
we kind of do that as well, but it's not when we're in those full dress uniforms. When
yeah.
we're in our more casual uniform, we call
Oh,
it the
okay.
Maverick uniform.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
when we start being a lot more silly when we're doing our
Mm,
marching around. We're not in like straight lines, we're in our sections and we're doing all these random things. And
uh,
but we do that. So I guess there's like those two different
mm,
dynamics where we have the marching band in the full dress uniform. We're very militaristic,
yeah.
and then there's this Maverick band where we're still in the uniform, we're still the band, but we're a lot more, I guess, loosey goosey.
Oh, I see. Yeah. The cool thing about Georging is that it seems loosey goosey, but it's actually like fairly structured. It's like it's structured chaos, and that's what I love about it. I love it's kind of keen to I think casual Fridays. It's like everyone's wearing a different Hawaiian shirt, and that's the chaos. But the structure is that everyone's still wearing khakis. Everyone is still wearing some Hawaiian shirt, and it's always buttoned down with their band shirt under. Um, so I don't know where I was going with that, but I guess I was comparing that with Georging. Yeah, I really enjoy Georging in that regard. It's like structured chaos. And it's based off the drumline cadences. So
Yeah, yeah,
if you watch Cal Poly long enough, we actually do pretty much the same thing over and over again. It's just we have so many cadences that if you're watching us for the first time, it looks like we're doing like all these crazy things, and it's a lot of fun.
yeah. It actually kind of reminds you of Stanford's band because
Yeah. Mhm.
they I mean, yes, they are like a very crazy bunch, but there is a couple of times where I notice structure and I know I can actually tell when something's coming based on something that I hear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So fairly similar. Um, let's see. Any other questions about being a teacher? I don't know. I feel like you've given a lot of insight. um,
Yeah, it's a lot more than at least I expected. I think
mhm.
if your parents are teachers, you probably know what it's like. But to be
Yeah,
actually in a teacher's shoes and see a regular day in the life,
yeah.
it'll be pretty eye opening. It
Uh-huh.
is a lot.
What do you think about in terms of finances, like salaries? Do you think teachers are paid enough, like about right, too much? What's your experience?
Um, I think I definitely think that there's just a lot on our plates.
Uh-huh.
While I do think that money could be beneficial in helping, I don't think it's the solution. I
Yeah.
honestly think that I think for one, it'd be a lot easier to work with a smaller group of students than to have like the
Yeah,
full
yeah.
like class load. So with if you have more teachers, which that becomes a
Yeah.
space issue, do you have enough classrooms for them? Then you can lessen the amount of students that you have to look over, and then that'll make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's one of the things. Um, Yeah, I think it'd be nice to be paid more. I don't, honestly, for me, it's not about the money. It's more about just having the respect
Yeah.
of being a teacher. And because I know when I was growing up that I don't, and maybe even now, there wasn't that much of a positive reputation for teachers. But then, when I
Mhm.
was going to college and grad school, then, I started hearing about how in other places outside the U.S., a lot of teachers are um, not only respected but also paid the same amount as other professions like doctors and
Mm,
lawyers and things like that. Um, so it's just very interesting to see that discrepancy in America.
yeah.
Um, that can be its own debate, but to kind of just put it succinctly, it would be nice to be paid more. But I
Uh-huh.
don't think that's going to be the solution. I definitely think that
Yeah.
um, there has to be other things to go along with that
Uh-huh.
for teachers to feel, I guess, comfortable with what they're doing. Because as I
Yeah.
mentioned, there's a lot of different things. I mean, there's so many things that teachers have to do, and um, time is there's only so much time that you have with
Right.
the students, and
Right.
trying to fit everything in that certain amount of time has caused a lot of, I think, a lot of stress
Yeah.
within teachers to either stay late or try to be as good as they could be. Um, but yeah, I guess I there's a lot to talk about, but it
Yeah.
would be nice to have more money.
Yeah.
That's
That's,
not
that's
the solution.
yeah, that's a good way to put it. I like how you mentioned decreasing the classroom size because I think my introverted self would appreciate that because I feel like a lot of my anxiety comes from other students around me. Like if I was just one on one with a teacher, like I would have like a ball with with like whatever I'm learning. Um,
Mhm.
so I think decreasing the class size would definitely help. At least for like introverts, like myself. Um, like what's one thing like you would change about the education system? Because I think looking back, like going through the education system, there's a couple things that I would change. I would probably make it more hands-on, more learn by doing. I'm not just saying that because like that's the Cal Poly motto.
I was about
Like
to
I,
say,
I
yeah.
like having I like having like my hands like that hands-on sort of learning, um, like aspect versus just strictly visuals or strictly like auditory.
Mhm.
Uh, so what would you
So,
change about the education system?
so one of the things that has been discussed a lot in terms of having kids learn better is
Uh,
like allowing for choice and
yeah.
um, being able to, the term is differentiate, and make things to different kids styles. So for example, like you,
Mhm.
if you
Yeah.
feel like you can work better on your own, then maybe there would be a space in the classroom for you that you can work by yourself. There could be another section for kids that like to socialize or at least talk with each other to get the answers from their peers. There could
Uh,
be another section where it's teacher led, where the teacher kind of scaffolds, that's a teaching term, where the
mhm.
teacher kind of helps the kids learn. Um, and then there could be another section. So the thing is, it'd be nice to be able to have each of those different types of learning. And that's one of the things that I think most teachers are trying to do now.
Yeah.
I guess modular is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But if you think, like let's think back to CI. Do you remember
Mhm.
the science classrooms in CI?
Yeah, I took physical science freshman year, bio second year, chemistry third year, and then physics senior year.
So I don't know if you remember, but
Um,
there were these black tables.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and the thing is, they're nailed to the ground. And
Uh-huh.
not only are they nailed to the ground, but they also have electrical outlets connected to them.
Oh,
And
yep.
so
Mhm.
to try to create some sort of um, like modular setting based on that
Oh, that'd be nice.
um,
Yeah,
would be nice, but it takes a lot of work and effort. You would have to
yeah,
disconnect the electrical outlets. You'd have to,
yep,
chop off the legs basically. So there's a lot of time and resources and work that needs to be done. Um,
yeah.
but even to get that stuff done, you'd have to put in a work order form. Then the maintenance
Oh,
people have
yeah.
to come to do that, and so there's a lot of steps, and it's not always as simple as you'd want it to be. It
Oh, I see.
usually takes a lot more steps than would want it to take. You'd want it to be something that you can
Mhm.
quickly take charge of. But a lot of the
Uh-huh.
times, as a teacher, you don't have that opportunity. You don't have the time. You don't have the resources, and it's always a challenge to try to um, make it best
Mhm.
for your students. And so you do the best that you can.
Oh, yeah, interesting. So you can't just chop off the legs of a desk and like put casters on them.
What was the second thing you said? Casters?
Casters? Yeah, those are the rolly thingies that you can attach like to the bottom
Oh,
so that you can
like
roll them
wheels
around.
then.
Yeah, yeah, they're basically like
Um,
wheels.
I don't think safety I don't think the safety team nor
I see.
the maintenance people would be happy with you doing that. A lot of the
Uh-huh.
things you have to get permission to do a lot of the times.
I see.
Making any sort of like physical modifications to the appliances or things um, at the school, whether it's furniture and things like that, it usually has to go through maintenance. There's usually some sort of paperwork, or it has to go through someone to be
Mm,
approved. It'd be nice if you didn't have to, but unfortunately, there are specific ways that schools want you to do things. And so that's one
I
of the
see.
barriers in the simplicity of trying to change things up to make things um, more I guess equitable for the students. One
Mhm.
of the things that I could recommend would be to create, I guess, different lessons. And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is like, if you're going to work by yourself, here's all the resources.
Mhm.
After you watch those resources, answer these questions. If you want to work with me, you can move to the front of the class. You'll get a lesson from me, and then you'll work on this yourself. Um, if you want to if you want to learn by yourself, or if you're more of a visual learner, here's some YouTube videos about the topic, and then
Yeah.
answer these questions. But to create all those lessons and to create all those different ways, it takes a lot of time as well.
I
So
see.
to be able to balance all those things together, there is just not enough time. Having one teacher do that, it's very difficult.
Uh-huh.
So again, it's not too much about the money. It's a lot more about getting enough resources. Um, I guess time. Honestly, it's a lot about time.
Mhm.
If we could have more time, we would be able to do all these things. But there's just so limited amounts of time. You basically only get 180 days with the
Uh-huh.
students. So you need to make sure that you're using all those days, making them worthwhile, trying to do your best to make it equitable for all of them,
Yeah.
um, doing what you can to make sure that everyone learns. Hopefully, they learn the way that they learn best.
Uh-huh. So if I don't I don't know how to frame this question. So let's say you have a curriculum that you have to go through, and there's a part that you want to go more in depth with, but you just can't because of the breadth that you have to do because of the curriculum. Is there is that one thing that you would change? Is that you would like decrease the breadth of the curriculum so that you can go more in depth in certain subjects or certain
That's
topics?
kind of what the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards, do.
Uh-huh.
Um, instead of having a lot of topics and just kind of being generally knowing about all those
Yeah.
topics, it tends to dive into more specific topics, more in detail,
Uh-huh.
and within each of the standards there's core ideas that we want the kids to know. There's also some
Mhm.
concepts we want them to learn, and then there's also practices as either scientists or engineers that
Uh-huh.
we want them to learn as well. So within each of the standards there's these very specific things. Um, and the only thing that's causing us to want to cover all of those things and make sure they get covered is
Uh-huh.
standardized tests. The standardized
Yep.
tests that we have the students take are testing them on these specific standards. And so the main
Yeah.
reason why we teach these specific things is because of the standards that
Uh-huh.
and the tests that the kids have to take. because it's the test scores that everyone's looking at. It's what the district's looking at. It's what the public's looking at. If a school is doing good, then they would have good scores. And
Uh-huh.
so that's one of the things you might hear is that, like, a lot of the times teachers are teaching to the test, and they're teaching the kids how to do well on the test,
Mhm.
which unfortunately is one of the things that we do have to go over, because if a
Yeah.
kid has never seen a test before and they're like, I don't know how to do this, then they definitely aren't going to do well in it. So you kind of have to go over, you have to actually spend some time going over how to navigate the test, and do some
Mm.
practicing with that so that they know what to
Uh-huh.
expect when they take the test. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it, that there are tests that students have to take, and because of these tests, the teachers have specific things that they need to teach.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of a summary about why we can't spend too much time on one specific topic. Even if it's something that
Uh-huh.
we really enjoy, you
Uh-huh.
want to make sure that the topics get covered, the topics that the kids are going to see get covered, because you want to make sure that they do well in the test,
Uh-huh.
because the fate of the school is in those tests.
Uh, so are those standardizations set by the district or the state? Because I'm thinking more of the state, right?
They are set by the state. So those standards,
Mhm.
the next generation science standards, they were adopted by many different states. They're a national set of
Okay.
standards that were adopted by various states. There are English and math ones. You may have heard of the term Common
Mhm.
Core, and Common Core
Yeah.
is a national set of standards in English and math that are adopted by the states. And these are the standards that I guess the state wants the kids to learn, but they were
Mhm.
nationally developed typically. Um, and so usually standards are not set by the district level. They are usually
Yeah.
some sort of state or typically national level.
Oh, okay. I see. Yeah, I think Common Core wasn't a thing until after we were done with high school because I don't remember Common Core. I didn't really start to hear about it until after I graduated high school. Um,
Mm.
but I heard about like all the ways that you could do like a math problem and all that, and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
actually how we
there's
think as a computer science, person, like programming. There's so many different solutions to like the answer. There's no like one path to go through.
Yeah, and so I can't really speak much to the English and math specifically because I don't
Yeah.
teach those. But I do know that a lot of the times, the techniques that are taught by teachers in the lower grades, the reason
Uh-huh.
why they're teaching it that specific way is because there's something that's going to go on later on in their
Mhm.
education career, whether it's in middle or high school, that they're going to see and be able to relate that to. So it will not be the first time that they see it.
Mhm.
And that's what I've heard from other teachers, especially in math, that there's a reason why, there's a specific reason why it's done the way at the earlier grades. It's because they want it to mimic the way that they're going to see it um, later on in
Uh-huh.
high school.
I see. And one more teacher related question, because I know we're going a little long. But how has technology affected the education system? Because when I was in high school or just going through the academic system myself, technology was not involved really at all. Even towards the end of high school, like technology, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no emails. Um, like smartphones weren't as ubiquitous as now. So
Mm.
how's technology changed the education system?
It's changed a lot. Ever since ever since we've graduated from high school, there's
Mhm.
been a big push for all students to have access to laptops.
Uh-huh.
Typically, it's a class set of laptops. Some schools are still having computer labs. Some schools have a cart of laptops that are
Uh-huh.
shared between teachers. But luckily, the districts that I've been with and I've heard from, um, actually, most of the districts that I've seen and been with have had um, it's one-on-one device, meaning that every
Yeah.
student has a device. It may not necessarily be the one that they can take home, but it does mean that they have access to a device that they can use on for Google. Google has actually played a huge part in a lot of the districts that I've been in. A lot of the kids have Google accounts through the district that allows them to have Gmail, Google
Yep.
Classroom. Especially this year, Google Meets has been a big thing, and as Zoom has too. Let's
The
see. But
Chromebooks are
yeah,
a
the
big thing now.
rise. Say it again.
Chromebooks are a big thing now.
I would say a good amount,
Uh-huh.
both at CI and my district right now
Uh-huh.
has Chromebooks. And so Chromebooks are a pretty big deal. And, because of that, then a lot of the things are Google related.
Yep.
Let's see. So yeah, technology has changed a lot since we've been in school. And the big push has been to use computers more, which actually brings up a really interesting thing in that a lot of writing assignments, from my understanding,
Uh-huh.
are more digital. It's more about learning how to type instead of learning how to write.
Mm.
And so, you can talk about that to see the positives and negatives about that. But on top of that, the research or researching for things has also changed. Back in the day, we had Wikipedia, and it wasn't the most
Yeah.
reliable. Wikipedia
Nope.
now is pretty reliable.
Yeah.
Now the thing is,
Yeah.
um, because almost anyone can make a website, people can post
Yep.
almost anything online, and so can you tell if it's true or not? So now it's more about telling the truth from the lies that are online and teaching the kids to be able to tell the difference between those.
Mhm.
Um, Screen time's been another thing, especially during the pandemic. The kids have had a lot of screen time.
Yep.
I
Me
make it
too.
I make it a very important thing we take breaks every 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and I tell them to look away from the computer for 30 seconds
That's
each of
good.
those times.
Good.
Um, and it, I think at the lower level, tablets are pretty popular things for kids to use.
Mhm.
But then I think when you get towards middle and high school, smartphones have been a really big thing. When I was teaching at the
Yeah.
high school, when I was teaching at CI, a lot of kids had cell phones, smartphones, and a good amount of them would be on them during class. And so one of the things I had to try to figure out was how do I grapple with this problem of cell phones in class. I mean,
Yeah.
when we were in school, cell phones were still a thing,
Yeah.
but not smartphones. We would be, texting each other under the desks or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but now, I mean, I guess that still happens at the high school level. Um, Now they have just access to more things. Their phones
Yeah.
no longer just are used to message each other. They can watch YouTube videos. They can,
Mhm.
go online with them, and so it just creates a lot more things that teachers have to look
Yeah.
out for. And then another thing is that with the changes in technology, um, I guess that's another thing for teachers to learn. With newer teachers, younger teachers, they have more experience with this
Yeah.
technology. They grew up with it. But you talk to a veteran teacher,
Oh
probably,
no.
yeah, one of the older
Yeah.
teachers typically.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they have a hard time. A good amount actually are willing to learn using
That's
the
good.
new technology. But then some of the ones, so there are some stubborn teachers that,
Mhm.
you're just like, I don't want to use this. I want to keep it the way that I've been doing it this entire time. So you have to kind of deal with that, and that some of the teachers may not be comfortable with the new technology, and
Yeah.
so it's very interesting to see. Sometimes you have to walk some of your coworkers as a teacher how to use a program or how to access this thing because the technology has changed dramatically, exponentially,
Yeah.
and trying to get used to that technology to them has been quite challenging because they didn't grow up with it. So again, a lot of challenges, um, and it's just one of the many things to consider when you're becoming a teacher, or to
Yeah.
like kind of think about it in the teacher's perspective. It's like they have to now not only deal with this new curriculum, but also learn to use technology in various ways.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a good amount of resources online, whether it's for teachers to learn how to use the technology or for teachers to be able to teach curriculum. Um, but then it starts becoming a um, You have to vet the resources. So a lot of the
Mm.
times, like if there's a set curriculum, you may have to modify it to make it work for you. If it's
Oh,
free, you have to double check and make sure that the information's accurate. So there's
right.
always these
Mm,
many different things that we have to weigh out all the time.
I see. I think back when I was in high school, I think Mr. LaForge was like the best teacher in terms of utilizing technology at the time. Back then,
Mm.
YouTube was a thing, but it wasn't common to watch YouTube on your phone. But he made YouTube videos of a lot of his physics like lessons, and I think
Yeah,
he did a really
I do
good
remember
job.
that. I remember that
Yeah,
because I follow him on
yeah,
YouTube for that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was definitely um, I would say, if not on track, a little bit ahead of the curve when it came to
Yeah, he definitely was.
creating different ways for his students to learn. So I definitely think that he
Yeah,
was able to adapt well.
yeah, yeah. I think I follow him on YouTube as well. Um,
He
but
hasn't posted anything, but in
yeah,
the last few
for a
years.
while.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it was cool to see that he'd done
Mhm.
that. So
Yeah. Yeah, all the technology, that's definitely something of concern. Being in the technology field, having all this technology around, it's a big topic in like computer ethics. Whether it's I don't know, it's a whole nother can of worms, but technology in the education field, I think it can do a lot of good things, but I think there is a limit to, how much technology we can incorporate. Because,
mhm.
like, where do we draw the line between like having a physical, human teacher versus just like having a robot, start teaching students? Like, where do we draw the line between um, in person and not? And I think COVID is asking those questions because it sort of accelerated the use of the technology. Um, and just imagine like not having that technology during the COVID time. Like if like when we were in high school, not having the infrastructure, like I think we would just be screwed. Um,
Yeah, I would. There's this meme. I don't know if it was true or not, but I
uh,
saw that. I think it was. They said like during the Spanish flu or whatever in the early
mhm.
90s or 1900s, teachers would go on the radio or something like that, and the kids would listen to the
uh-huh.
radio. So I'm sure there's workarounds to it. But yeah, it's really
Yeah,
nice and convenient that the technology now exists that you can actually see the kids' faces while you're
yeah.
teaching them, even though you may not be in the same place. But then there's
Mhm.
a lot more things to consider as well.
Mm, I see. Well, I have a lot of other questions about teaching, but we'll move on
Right.
for now. Um, Before we move on to the future, there's one thing about the past I wanted to mention. When I was doing the podcast with Eduardo, we were talking about the Clue movie because how that came up was that at the end of every football game, Eduardo would say like, "I'm gonna go home and sleep with my wife." Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, Clue is one of my favorite movies, so I know exactly
Yeah,
what that is.
yeah. So at the time, I didn't know where the reference was. So quickly learned that it was from the Clue movie. Watched the Clue movie, and then I'm thinking to myself, where's this quote from? And then I don't know until the very end of the movie. It's like the last line of the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another good memory I think from the past. But Eduardo said you do a good Ellen Burnett impression.
Ellen
um,
Burnett.
yeah.
Huh. I don't know. I'm not sure who Ellen Burnett is. I know Carol Burnett, but I don't think I do a good impression of her. Um, I'd have to double check with Eduardo to see who he's talking about. But
Yeah, yeah.
I don't
I do have it
just
timestamped in the Eduardo episode. It's like around 2 hours in, so you can check that out.
all right.
um, but yeah, let's move on to the future. So, what are some of your goals, long term, short term, that you have?
Yeah, I'm hoping to stay with this district and
Mhm.
teach until I retire with this district. This is my third district, and each time it feels like I'm starting new all over again, which I kind of am.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to finally stay in one district. And just looking forward, I just hope to stay being a teacher, hope to still teach science, and hope that I guess by 65 that I just retire as a teacher. And I
Uh-huh.
hope that I've enjoyed my time being a teacher. It's really nice to have. Um, it's it's nice to be in this career in that there are it's a pretty stable, or I don't know what the right term is, but
Yeah, yeah.
secure. It's a very secure. It's pretty secure, I'd say. I wouldn't say it's very secure because I'm thinking actually back to the 2008 recession, and I remember
Oh,
that there were a good
yeah.
amount of teachers that when I was a student actually got laid off. So thinking about it, uh, overall, it's a fairly secure job. Um, I don't think there's going to be a I don't think there's going. I don't. There's always a demand in science teachers,
Mhm.
and so I don't think that there's ever going to be a tough time for me to find a job. I'm
Uh-huh.
just hoping that as I'm able to stay in the same district, so I don't have to kind of redo this entire thing again, because it's like moving. It's pretty stressful,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of come up with new things at a new place. Um, can only bring your resources from the last place and use them for so many things. So I'm hoping that for the next, let's see, 20, 30-ish, 35, 40-ish years, I'm able to stay with this district, continue
Mhm.
doing what I do, um, stay teaching, and just kind of hope to influence more kids and hopefully keep science cool and keep science
Uh-huh.
relevant and
Yeah,
keep science real.
yeah.
But yeah, that's really the that's the nice thing about. I guess it's a nice thing about being a teacher. It's pretty secure.
Mhm.
My job security is not something I have to worry too much about. I'm thankful for
That's
that.
good.
Um, but I guess there's always those little things. You never know that, especially right now.
Oh, yep.
I'm still not tenured yet, so I'm at the very bottom of my ladder. So who knows? But I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping to continue teaching up until I retire.
Mm,
Hopefully 65 or so.
I see. Any personal goals? Not related to, like, academics?
Yeah, it's a good question. Hoping at some point, I don't know when, to get a house. Um,
Mhm.
been with my girlfriend for almost 7 years now. I've known her for longer than that, but we've been together for about seven, and so I'm really happy with her. I'm really growing well as a person with her, so I'm really thankful
Mhm.
to have her. I'm just hoping to continue my life with her, um, and just continue to be, I guess, try to be as healthy as possible. Um,
Oh, yep. Yeah, that's the
uh,
big thing now that I'm older, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to, since a lot of our metabolism slow down. Um, you kinda have to you have to exercise now pretty much,
mhm.
to stay in shape. So, um
Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess I just want to continue how I am right now. I think
Mhm,
I finally found a good balance between work and personal life. I think I've grown fairly well as a person, learned from the past. And so I think I'm at a good point in my life right now where
mhm.
as long as things are going the way they are right now, I think I should be good.
Okay, cool. I think that's a good point to wrap up on. Um, Anything else you wanna mention or any shout outs, you wanna give where people can find you, all that good stuff?
Uh, well, you can find me in Northern California teaching elementary science. I don't really, as of lately, like within the last few months, I haven't been that active. I don't even think I'm that active on Facebook. I post things like once every few months. I have an Instagram that I use for contests. I
Mhm.
think I have a Twitter that I never use.
Yep, I will
Um,
tag you.
um, oh yeah, I think you tagged me one time. I don't have a TikTok. I uninstalled Snapchat from my phone because I don't use Snapchat.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, if you do want to get in contact with me, just feel free to shoot me a Facebook message. That's probably the one thing I do check. Even though I don't really
Mhm.
post, I do scroll. I scroll through that news feed, and that's how I get most of my news. Um, like NPR. You
Yep.
can't catch me on NPR, but I don't know what it was, but it wasn't until college, or not even
Uh-huh.
college, after college, that I really had a deep appreciation for NPR and public radio stations. Oh
Yep.
man, they're so
Mhm.
good. I guess yours is a KCLU, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Facebook's probably the best way. But I hope everyone's been doing well. Um, it's been a tough year with COVID.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think everyone's lives have been thrown around in many different ways and unexpected ways. And it's, honestly, it's a lot tougher because it's not how we normally live. We don't get to travel that much anymore. We don't even get to see people
Sure.
in person that much anymore. Thankfully, we've have vaccines now. Um, and
Mhm.
as long as we are able to get those vaccines to everybody who wants one, although I'd recommend everybody get one, um, I think we can start to return to something that was like what we used to have. And I think
Mhm.
then we can start to feel a little bit better. Um,
Mhm.
I honestly haven't been keeping in touch with a lot of people. And, it's, I do have myself to blame. But I
Yeah,
also kind
it's
of
hard as an
realized
adult.
that it's challenging to keep in touch with everybody when you don't get to see them as often, and there's
Yeah.
not really times or chances to really catch up. So if you've made it this far into listening to this, even if we only talked a little bit, we were in band 1 year together. No matter what, it was really helpful for me. I think it was really beneficial to have you, whoever you are, in my life. You helped me learn. Had some good experiences, maybe not some good experiences, but it still helped me learn and develop into the person I am now. Um, so I really hope everyone's been doing all right, and feel free to reach out if you want to talk. I'm sure it'd be really cool to hear from people that I haven't heard from in
Mhm.
many years. What is this, 10 years?
Oh, yeah,
To see how
yeah.
things are going. I don't even keep in contact much with my college friends anymore. I think we've all gone mostly our separate ways. Um,
Mhm.
but I really just hope everyone's been doing okay, as best as they can. Um, I wish everyone stays as healthy as they can be, both physically and mentally.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I just want everyone to take care of themselves.
Mhm. Awesome, well, thank you, Julian. I I enjoyed this reflection time with, other alumni as well. Um, I think Eduardo said it best, and I didn't realize this, is that, like, I'm doing everyone a favor by, essentially, like, catching up with everyone, like, for everyone else, if that makes sense.
Mm, yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm always nervous at the very beginning of every podcast, but at the end, it's very, like, a relaxed, like, I guess, feeling at the very end. So, yeah, thank you for your time, Julian. And
No problem.
yeah, and it's nice seeing you again.
Yeah, I hope you're doing well as well.
Yeah. All right. Take care, Julian.
I'd see ya.